Stillman and Company, 102.5, 106.3, The Game, streaming live on Twitter, Twitch, YouTube, and Facebook Live. We are live today from the Busy Bee Plumbing, Heating, and Air Conditioning Game Nashville Studios. Bridgestone Arena tonight, the Predators take on the Calgary Flames. And you know what the old saying is, maybe the eighth time will be the charm. Barry Trotz will join us right here at 5 o'clock today. Here again as we get you set for Predators and Calgary Flames. Ian is here today. Hello, Ian.
What up, what up?
So I do want to just throw this out from the jump. If you are coming to the game tonight, the National Predators Foundation will host a holiday toy drive with Toys for Tots. That is today. Before the game against the Calgary Flames, fans are encouraged to drop toys off at any Bridgestone Arena entrance prior to the 7 o'clock puck drop or purchase from an Amazon wish list, which I'm sure will be linked at the Predators website. And that's for Toys for Tots, and they will be distributed, and they will continue to make donations through December 15th at the Ford Ice Center or through the Predators Amazon wish list. So I want to start on this. We know the Titans stink. Ian, would you agree?
Hard to disagree.
We know the Predators right now stink. Ian, would you disagree?
Hard to disagree. Yeah, I mean, they stink. They both stink right now. Yeah.
The Titans stink. The Predators stink. That's not anything you don't already know. Gentry Estes wrote about it in the Tennessean last week. Robbie and Joe spent their whole show this morning talking about it. And quite frankly, I truly believe that the beginning of this season for hockey, football I kind of saw coming. Hockey I didn't. But I'm totally honest when I am telling you that I think it's making me a little depressed. Like, I truly think how bad these teams are. And the fact that I go on air and rant and rave and bitch every day, I think it's making me a little depressed. I'm not going to lie. But one thing everybody seems to be doing that I just can't do is I can't lump them together. And there will be an argument that I can't lump the Predator struggles and the Titan struggles where they're both at the bottom of the league, where they both spend a lot of money in free agency. I can't lump them together. And people will say that it's because Barry Trotz comes on the show, which Barry Trotz is coming on the show today. But that's not how I see it. I said on Friday, if the Predators lost on Saturday, that it would be time to make a coaching change, and I stand by that. Adam Vinga today, he's like, are you going to back down off of that? You said on Friday if they lost Saturday. Nope, they lost Saturday to Ottawa. They went 0-3 on the road trip. I thought they needed to go 3-3 on. And I said after the Montreal loss where they had 7 shots midway through the game and they got shut out against the worst team in the Eastern Conference, I said, look, something's got to change. Like, I like Burnett. I think he's a good coach. I think he'll go somewhere else. He'll probably win. I don't know why he's not winning here, but something's got to change. So I am on board with making the change at the coach. But the reality is, I still don't see the Titans and the Preds as the same. And the reason why? Because the Predators are accountable. They let you in. That's the difference. Poor Brian Callahan has to get up there after every single loss and face the music. But have you heard at all this season from Amy Adams Strunk? No. Rand Carthon did all those interviews in training camp about how they checked every box. But all we've heard from him this year after the loss at Detroit was that the ball didn't bounce their way. What about Mr. AI model from business school, Chad Brinker? He sat down for 2 hours with Mike Keith at the Senior Bowl and told everybody how great things were going to be. Said they had to win immediately. Can we get an update? Burke Nihill, team CEO, sat down at training camp, told the other radio station, we crushed this coaching hire. We know it. Where's the interview with him? And for me, that's the difference. We can have disagreements about what the team does or what direction they choose to go, whether it's the Titans or the Predators. And that happens all the time. I've told Barry Trotz. And again, I think Barry and I are going to have a disagreement today when it comes to the coach. But I told Barry Trotz when he signed UC Soros to that contract, I wouldn't have done that. And I think that's something that the Predators may end up regretting. But they're always going to do, whether it's the Titans or the Preds, they're always going to have to do what they think they should do. And that's what a general manager or a president or an owner or a coach should always do. But every Tuesday at 5 o'clock, Barry Trotz faces the music. Sean Henry goes on Chasing Big Joe, and they explain where they're at. They explain, if they don't want to fire the coach, they explain why they don't want to fire the coach. They haven't run from the fact that this season is unacceptable. They didn't do what the Titans did last year, where the Titans called TD into the facility and they sat down with him and they told him, there are no problems between Mike Vrabel and Rand Carthon. It is as well-oiled a machine as you will see. The Predators don't do what the Titans did, where they called Diana Rossini on Thanksgiving of last year and said, Mike Vrabel will be the coach no matter what. He's our John Harbaugh. He's our Mike Tomlin. The Predators don't put out statements saying that Mike Mularkey's the coach going forward and fire him a week later. And that's why I don't lump them together. If there's any reason I believe the Predators will be okay in the long run, it's because they explain their plan and they explain their process. And I am a firm believer in sports. If your process is right 100% of the time, you're going to get the result you want about 65% of the time. I know we want 100 and 100, but it doesn't work that way. And right now, in my opinion, the 35% is where the Predators lie, where it is mystifying that this hasn't worked, at least to any extent. With the Titans, their process has always been flawed. Vrabel and Rand are going to work together. It's going to be great. We're going to trade for L'Jarius Sneed, who everybody else in the NFL is skeptical of giving a big contract to, but we're going to do it because we know. The Titans, their whole thing is, you'll see, and then they go silent. You'll see, we got a good young quarterback. You'll see. Can we get an update from Rand Carthon? Can he sit down? Can we have a chat? They took Tavondre Sweat at 38. Everybody said, well, he doesn't really rush the passer in college. So is he? No. He will rush the passer in the pros. You will see. But again, we have no idea how Amy feels about this season. We have no idea how Rand feels about this season, other than, again, the ball didn't bounce their way against the Lions. We have no idea what Chad Brinker's AI injury model said about the two corners that they brought in here. They're not accountable. That's the difference. The way the Predators operate their organization, from Sean Henry to Barry to the coach, the way they run it is the way that I would expect any operation to be run. Barry Trotz is in charge, and nobody questions his authority to make decisions. Andrew Burnett is the coach, and Barry Trotz has told you he's not going to fire the coach. So when I said, hey, I'd fire the coach on Sunday morning after they arrived back from Calgary, when I said that, not Calgary, Ottawa, the other day, I knew he wasn't going to do it because he kept coming on the show and telling me and really telling all of you he's not going to do it. And if you operate the correct way 100% of the time, then 65% of the time you will hit. And it takes me back to Floyd and the years that we spent on the radio with Floyd. And I think we can all agree, Floyd would be the first to say this. He wasn't 100% as a GM. But he had core principles he believed in, and he stuck to them. I've made the joke. He wasn't racist. He wasn't sexist, but he was an injurist. And if you were injured, he didn't want you, which means he would have never drafted Jeffrey Simmons. So you wouldn't have Jeffrey Simmons, who's your best player right now. But you also wouldn't have wasted the 5th overall pick on Corey Davis. You also wouldn't have wasted the 21st overall pick on Caleb Farley. You wouldn't have traded a 2nd-round pick for Julio Jones. All of those things would have never happened. L'Jarius Sneed, Ian, I don't want to speak for somebody who died 3 years ago, but I think I feel confident L'Jarius Sneed would not be a Tennessee Titan if Floyd Reese was the general manager.
Yeah, most likely not, but
He was an injurist. And again, his process didn't yield 100% positive results. There was still an Andre Woolfolk and a Tyrone Calico in there. There was still a Bryant Mix, one of the picks he made that he regretted his entire career. But more often than not, it was Michael Roos and David Stewart and Derek Mason and Steve McNair and Javon Curse and Keith Bullock. His last draft, he drafted the Rookie of the Year with the first pick and an All-Pro in Cortland Finnegan in the 7th round. The Predators process, I am convinced, is the process that a competent organization operates with. When John Hines was the coach and they lost a game 9-2 after giving up 7 goals in the second period, and Hines got up there and said, well, if we didn't give up 7 goals in the second period, I couldn't take him seriously, because nobody says that. But that's what the Titans do. Oh, if this hadn't happened. Oh, if we had had this. Oh, it was bad luck. Oh, the ball didn't bounce our way. That's what losers say. You'll see. Nobody else in the league would do this, but you'll see. And then when it hits the fan, where's Rand? Where's Chad? Where's Burke? Where's Amy? Nowhere to be found. And that's the difference. Again, I don't think the Predators are going to make the playoffs this year. I think it's going to be a bad season. I think people are going to lose their jobs because of it, probably the coach at the end of the year. But that doesn't mean that I don't think the Predators will be able to get back on track, because they're run by people who have had success doing this stuff before. And the Titans just gaslight you and run away. The Titans tell you the ball didn't bounce their way. 615-737-1025. That's how we're starting today. 615-737-1025 here on our program. And coming up next, I do wonder, when it comes to the public trust of the Predators, I do wonder, and the Titans, I do wonder how much this accountability matters to you all and how much it matters in the long run about how the fans feel. We'll get to that coming up next. Hey, Nashville's best deal this week is 312 Pizza Company in Germantown. 312 Pizza Company serves the best Italian pizza in town, as well as Chicago-style eats like Chicago dogs, Italian beef sandwiches, and more. Check them out at 371 Monroe Street in Germantown, or order takeout online at 312pizzacompany.com. Head to the Game National/deals now to get half off a $30 gift card to 312 Pizza Company while supplies last.
You feel like you're on an island, Brian? Like organizationally, things are not good. But you're the guy who answers for absolutely everything.
Oh no, I don't feel that way. I feel like I'm in constant contact with everybody here, ownership, front office, those things, the conversations daily, usually weekly. And so those are things that this is the job. I'm the head coach of the football team, and I'm the one that's got that walks out and talks to you guys 4 or 5 days a week, and do the production meetings on Saturdays and Fridays, and that's part of my job. And so I don't feel like it's on an island at all. I actually feel pretty confident about where we are and where we're headed, and those things I don't think about. This just to me is part of what being a head coach is I'm the one that's out front in front of the media and multiple times a week. So no, I feel perfectly comfortable with how it is.
I'll tell you, Brian Callahan answers those controversial questions as well as anybody that's ever coached this team. I mean, hey, do you feel like they're hanging you out to dry? When they ask you all these, when everybody asks you all these questions and everybody's mad about things that are not even your purview, it's not really your responsibility. You're not in charge of the roster. So the right tackle spot, like, it's not really your fault, but everybody's going to bitch at you about it because you're the one who's mandated by the league to talk. And Brian Callahan says, no, not me. I enjoy it. That's the job. I'm the head coach. Phone lines driven by WilsonCountyHunter.com. Greg says, again, my opening take today was the difference between the Predators and the Titans. I cannot lump them together. They both stink. They both spent money in free agency. They're both disappointing seasons. But the difference is the Predators are accountable. They articulate their plan. I think their plans make sense, albeit I do think they're kind of up against it when it comes to the coach. And yet they will face the music, whether it's Trotz or Sean Henry or whomever. They will face the music. The Titans, you don't hear from Chad, you don't hear from Rand, you don't hear from Burke, you don't hear from Amy, is what it is. Greg texts in and says, Jared doesn't care about the results for the team for real. He cares if you talk to him. That is so childish. First of all, that's not true. I care about the results of the team more than I would assume, any other host covering the teams in this town. And I mean that with no disrespect. I mean, I guess Willie with the Predators, he's like part of the team, so it's a little different. But Derek Mason retired a Raven. Adam Vinkin roots for the Saints. Robbie Stanley roots for the Packers. Joe Retro roots for the Lions. Chase roots for the Cowboys. Folks, I got one team, the Titans. That's it. When it comes to hockey, I don't even know half the guys in the league. When they start talking about who's going to get traded for who, I ask Ian, I'm like, Ian, who the hell's that guy? But I'll tell you what, I watch every Predators game. I care about the winning and the losing. And the way I view it, I like Barry Trotz. And I have a good relationship with Barry Trotz. And I like Andrew Burnett. But to me, those guys, they're just a coach. Like Andrew Burnett will, at some point, sooner or later, and if they don't start winning, it's probably going to be sooner. Sooner or later, he's not going to be the coach anymore. But I'll always be a Nashville Predators fan. I felt that way for the jump. I've gotten into it with Wisenhunt. I've gotten into it with Malarkey. I've gotten into it with Vrabel. Haven't really gotten into it with Callahan. And I like Callahan. But he's going to be gone at some point. And I'm still going to be a Tennessee Titans fan. And that's how it's always going to be. And the other thing, too, is when, again, Jared only cares if you talk to him. I don't care if you talk to me. I care that you talk, period. That's what I care about. Like, when is Rand Carthon going to sit down and do an interview? Even if he did an interview with the other station, where I'm sure they wouldn't ask him as tough of questions as we'd ask him on this station. But if he did another, when's he going to do that? And not say, well, the ball didn't bounce our way, guys. When's he going to talk about how L'Jarius Sneed has blown up in their faces? When are they going to talk about how the quarterback couldn't throw for 200 yards against the 32nd ranked defense and what that means when they drafted him in the second round? When's that going to happen? You say this is about, well, Jared says that, and again, this goes back to when Rand Carthon didn't call me over the Kevin Byard report that I had that was like 95% accurate. And people will say, well, you felt big time that he didn't call you. That's why you got no. It's because that's the general manager's job. You may think that that's not his job when people have got info that they're going to make public to discuss it with the people that have it, but that is in fact the general manager's job. And I know this because I worked with a general manager every day. But again, that's accountability, that's responsibility, and that's the difference. That's the process. And when it comes to the Predators, they're available. I might not agree with what they say. Again, I wouldn't have given UC Saros that contract. And if UC Saros doesn't win a playoff series in a couple of years, I'll say, what did you expect? You guys kept saying he was a Pecorine level goalie, and I never saw it when it mattered most. Those are just differences in opinion. But again, in the way with which you run your organization, the Titans just gaslight everybody, tell you how great it's going to be, and then outside of the coach who's mandated to talk by the league, they go run and hide. And the Predators don't do that. And I don't even think you can argue that. And that's a big deal. One texter says the Titans are Adam in Portland's Madian. Adam in Portland
what happened
says,
this time?
Adam in Portland says the Titans are optimistic, so you penalize them. So dumb. Either fire both GMs and coaches or don't fire either. Or do what you're doing and play favorites as the flagship station would. You know what is hilarious? In 2020 and 2021, when Robinson and Vrabel were the general manager and coach and they won games, and in 2021 with David Poyle and John Hines, they couldn't win a playoff series. They kept doing stupid things like trade second-round picks for Jeremy Lazan and all those things. I kept saying they need to fire, they need to move on from Poyle, and they need to fire John Hines. I kept saying it. Ian, did I not?
Definitely wanted to fire John Hines.
I mean, I was their staunchest critic on the flagship station. And everybody said there were people in this building at Bridgestone Arena that said, you cover for the Titans. You treat them differently than you treat us. But you want to know what the difference was? The Titans with John Robinson, Mike Vrabel, they weren't doing everything the right way, but they were winning games. And again, I thought their plans made sense outside of some of the crazy stuff that I went nuts about, like drafting Caleb Farley and trading for Julio Jones. I jumped all over the Predators when they fired Laviolette because I didn't think Laviolette was the problem, and I thought Laviolette had won some. But guess what? I've said Burnett should be fired. Trotz won last year. Trotz won a cup as a head coach. They won last year. They outperformed expectations. The Titans underperformed expectations, and everybody told us it was Mike Vrabel's fault. You'll see, Jared. Give Ran a chance. Give him a chance, Jared. Everybody told me that when they fired Vrabel, and I said they should have cleaned house. You'll see, Jared. Talk to Chad Brinker, Jared. Chad Brinker will tell you. Okay, fine. We'll see. And they don't even have a right tackle. So it's like, again, you're like, well, fire them both because they both stink. Again, you can have a bad season and not everybody get fired. The San Francisco 49ers are having a bad season. I wouldn't fire anybody over there. But there is a difference between, hey, last year they overachieved. This year they are stinking it up and we want answers. And this year we will prove it to you. And then telling me the ball didn't bounce my way when you lose by 30 points on the road. Come on now. What are we doing? 615-737-1025, which is our phone number on the program. 615-737-1025. We are live at Bridgestone Arena here on Stillman & Company. We will be giving away Preds tickets later today in the show. And also be sure to tune into Chase and Big Joe tomorrow from 9 a.m. to 11 a.m. for your chance to qualify to win a pair of tickets to the all-inclusive Eurostone Club at Bridgestone Arena to see Brett Eldridge live on Friday, December 20th. The Brett Eldridge ticket contest is supplied by Green Trees, a family-owned cannabis company. Check them out online at greentreeswithaz company.com.
It's funny, before we came out, AJ Highsmith and I were in, my office, and I'm straightening up my desk because my wife is coming to practice today. So Lord knows I got to have it clean before she comes in.
Yeah.
And I was looking at the sheet that the offensive staff had broke down in terms of our needs going into the offseason. And, we could, I'll show you guys later, but we literally checked every single box from what we felt like we needed in starters to the furthest backup. And we were able to hit every single one of those. So, and that's what we really set out to do. We really set out to, wasn't necessarily like, hey, we got to flip this roster, but it was like, let's fill these holes and these needs that we have.
That was Rand Carthon. That's one of my all-time favorites, Ian. I'm not going to lie.
Oh, that's a good one.
I mean, and what's funny is, if it wasn't for Ian, I don't think any of us would have heard that cut, because Ian heard it on NFL radio during the training camp tour, Sirius XM, and said to me, "Did you hear what Rand Carthon said?" I said, "No, I haven't heard it." He said they checked every box. I was like, okay, we're getting that. They didn't even have a right tackle. Checked every box. Pure incompetence. All right, let's go to your phones as promised. Cody is up next on the Predators organization. Thank you for calling and waiting. What's up, Cody?
Hey, I just wanted to make a couple of quick points. The reason that I think the Pred season is worse is only because they had league-wide expectations. The Titans weren't really looked at as like an improved team league-wide, really outside of this market, and not even people in this market didn't expect them to do that great. But the other thing that I will say real quick is I do disagree a little bit with your point about coming out and taking accountability for a team being bad or whether they're good, because at the end of the day, if Rand went to the podium and was like, man, this team sucks, they're still going to suck whether he says they suck or not. So I mean, you can say, hey, yeah, this team sucks, and it's not going to change the fact that they have 3 wins. Or whether he says, oh, man, this team is improving. They're still going to have 3 wins. They still are going to.
And ultimately, we're all like, at the end of the day, what matters, and I appreciate your call, Cody. You're not wrong with what you said. At the end of the day, it all matters whether or not you win or lose. Like, if the Predators keep losing, like, I think Andrew Burnett's a good coach. I'd still fire him. Like, they've lost 7 in a row after they started the year 0-5. Like, I still think he's a good coach. Last year still happened. He still was nominated for the Jack Adams Award, even as the interim coach on a President's Trophy-winning Florida Panther team. And I'd still fire him because he's not winning enough games, and because I don't see an answer to this of why, like, how do you go from hopeless every night to having it in the NHL? You change coach. So, yes, at the end of the day, all these guys are paid to win, and I get that. I understand. But accountability does matter to me. And it just doesn't matter. Like, what I've learned in life is that for some people, none of this stuff matters. Like, none of the, hey, are you honest or are you dishonest? Doesn't matter. Did the stock go up or did it go down? Character doesn't matter to some people. It matters to me. Accountability doesn't matter to some people. It matters to me. I'm about to be a parent. And the one thing I will tell you, I have no idea at all if I'll be a good parent or not. And I'm not even holding myself to the expectation that I'll be a good parent, because I don't know how to control that. I've seen some people that have one child that's just the best, greatest child ever, and others, like their second kid is a disaster, or the other way around. I have no idea how much is the parent, how much is everything. I don't know. But the one thing I can promise you that I'll be as a parent is I'll be accountable. That's the one thing that I know. That when I screw up, put my hand up and say, that's on me. And maybe that doesn't matter to other people, but it matters to me. And I do think, again, I'm not saying Rand get up there and say, hey, this team sucks. But I do think that they could give people an idea of, this is what we thought, this is where we have to go, this is our plan to get there. Instead of, you'll see, which is the route they go. Go back to the press conference, the first ball didn't bounce our way press conference, after they fired Vrabel. And I didn't think this was necessarily fair to Rand Carthon, But they stuck Rand Carthon up there the day they fired Mike Vrabel. And Rand Carthon was asked if he could tell everybody, and again, yes, he's talking to the media, but he's really talking to the fans. When you have that kind of press conference, the one where you just fired the coach, everybody's watching. So this is kind of a mission statement type press conference. Everybody's watching, fans, the rest of the league, potential coaching candidates, everybody's watching this. And he was asked, what's the vision for the organization? And he basically said, you'll have to see. Okay, well, if you're going to spend an entire year telling us you'll see, and then we see the worst team in the league, why should I give you any benefit of the doubt? You didn't walk me through this. You didn't try to cool the temperature. You said you checked every box. You didn't even have a right tackle. To me, that's the difference. So for me, accountability matters. Maybe it doesn't matter to everybody else. And again, control matters. Like you put Rand Carthon up there. Rand, why'd you fire Vrabel? Well, Miss Amy had her reasons. We can't really get into it. Doesn't seem to me like you have a lot of authority. Well, so now and again, I think that all seeps through. I mean, the Titans hide Rand Carthon so much that this year he had an impromptu press conference that they did not tell the media ahead of time he was having. This was when they introduced L'Jarius Sneed. And then Rand got up there afterwards and took questions. And by the way, Corey Curtis asked a question about right tackle and Rand laughed at him. But the Titans didn't announce that their general manager would be having a press conference that day. Why? Because they're trying to hide him. Now, why they're trying to hide him, that's up to them. But again, when you're trying to hide your general manager, that didn't give me a lot of faith that he knows what he's doing. And again, with Trotz, I think Trotz knows what he's doing. But we'll see at 5 o'clock when he sits down. You think I got softballs? I haven't thrown him softballs all year. You think I'm going to do it today when they've lost 7 in a row? Come on now. Unbelievable. Someone said, they said on Robbie and Retro this morning, the Predators could win every single game from here the rest of the year and still possibly miss the playoffs because they've dug themselves such an enormous hole. I haven't done the math. I've given up on the playoffs. Like, I'm sorry. I'm sure there are people out there like, no, Jared, the St. Louis Blues in 2019, I'm realistic. They're not going to make the playoffs this year. It's a bad year. People should be on notice after this year. And again, I think they should fire the coach. One texter says, this Titans team reminds me of a team that went to New England and lost 59-0. I thought, it's crazy because they ended up winning the game. I thought when they went to Houston, and they gave up the 80-yard kickoff return to start the game, and the Texans scored in the first play, I thought we were looking at 89-0 2.0. And they ended up winning that game. My favorite story about the 89-0 or the 59-0 game, not only does Floyd have a game ball from the game, but if you watch the Football Life documentary on Bill Belichick, they follow Belichick for that entire year. And when the Patriots score to make it 59-0, they show the Patriots coaching box. And at this point, the Patriot coaches, they all know they're going to win by 100. So they're like, all right, touchdown. And there's Floyd in a 3-piece suit. All claps because they were just beating that ass. That team won 8 games that year. This team's going to win 4 maybe. Ian was right. I'll tell you. Jess says, Jared, where did you and Adam from Portland go wrong? I feel like over the last few weeks, we've all been spectators to the slow and painful disintegration of what was once a beautiful relationship. What can we do to repair this? I'd say Adam and Portland and I have had an up and down relationship over the years.
That's probably fair to say.
But just like all up and down relationships, they last as long as they do because of love. And I've got love for Adam in Portland. But I remember when Adam in Portland used to get on here and accuse me of being a Steeler fan because the Titans were playing Cincy. And this was before Cincy was fun. This was when Cincy was bad. And Andy Dalton was the quarterback. So they were playing Cincy. And the next week they were playing Pittsburgh, who was Ben Roethlisberger, top of the AFC. And I just noticed that whenever we talk about Pittsburgh, even 2 weeks out, phone lines would light up. So we just kept talking about the Pittsburgh game. And for some reason, Adam spent like a year convinced that I was just the biggest Pittsburgh Steeler fan there ever was. Now Pittsburgh's not any good anymore. We don't compare the Titans to Pittsburgh, although they're okay. We don't compare the Titans to Pittsburgh anymore, and nobody ever accuses me of that. But I love Adam because I know he loves the teams just as much as I do, for whatever that's worth. One texter into the text line says, maybe behind closed doors, Amy is already making a new GM list. So I don't know what's going to happen. But if I had to guess, I think Rand's out at the end of the year. And I think Chad Brinker becomes the new head of football operate, whatever the Fakakta titles, whatever, he's in charge. And he and Callahan stay. Not, again, I would not bet on that, but I'm just telling you that's what my gut is saying is going to happen. And since I was the only one whose gut was right last year about Vrabel, we'll see if I'm right on this one. 615-737-1025. Okay, I did enjoy this. I did it today, and I did enjoy it, and we got to get to it next. We will. Stillman and Company, 1025 The Game.
I just know that we have a lot of young players, we have a lot of first, second, third year players. We got guys that are under contract. And so there's a large majority of guys in our team that are set to return. And this, it's okay. And maybe they don't like hearing that particular message, but the message is what it is. And that's where we are. And there's a lot of guys that this stuff is important for. You don't get to just mail in 4 weeks of an NFL season. They only get 17 of these games, and there's an approach that's necessary to go play them. And I believe in trusting our guys to go get themselves ready to go play every game just the way they did in week 1 and week 2 and week 3. It's the same to me. And, I think that's also very revealing of character if that's not how you approach your job. And I don't sense at any point that we have guys in our locker room that are that way. I've got a ton of confidence that they do things the right way.
Brian Callahan's message for not mailing in the rest of the season. It's time to play for pride, boys. So I was thinking about this today because, again, accountability matters to me, and the Titans have none. And I think honesty matters to me, and I'm not convinced the Titans have that either. And look, you could say what you want about the Predators and the money they spent in free agency. Barry Trotz said consistently from the first day of camp, hey, until we win these games, it's just fantasy hockey, trying to, chill a little bit. And yet in Titanland, it was just so different. And I thought about playing the Sunshine Day mix that we had after the Packer game where we made fun of all the things they said in the offseason about how great this year was going to be. But there was nothing that I thought of that encapsulated just this constant barrage of sunshine more than Charles Davis in June of this year. This was on NFL radio on Sirius XM. Charles calls the preseason games, and Charles is tight with the Titans. And this is 2 minutes and 40 seconds of Charles Davis asked about how the Titans are going to be this upcoming season, and to listen to everything he says, which is so much, I mean, it's going to be a little painful, but just think about where you are now with all of these things. Ian, leave my mic up. Let's play the Charles Davis cut.
I love the moves that they've made. Rand Carthon's second year as the general manager. I thought last year getting Peter Skronsky in the first round out of Northwestern and playing him at guard right away, I think it's a terrific move, and he's going to be even that much better this year. But how about they fortify this year and bring in J.C. Latham out of Alabama and play him at left tackle? Remember, Callahan was in Cleveland when they drafted Jedrick Wills out of Alabama, who had been a right tackle. He converted him to left tackle. I think he'll do the same thing with Latham. Lloyd Cushenberry, a bigger size, more skilled center coming in from Denver. Daniel Brunskill, not a name that jumps out at you. But Bruce, every time we talk about this young man, he's starting for someone and doing a nice job for him, filling in. He did it for San Francisco. Now he's going to come in and play it for Tennessee. I do like what they've done in terms of receivers. Hopkins last year, Calvin Ridley this year, Tyler Boyd this year from Cincinnati, and now you need Traylon Burks, the first-round pick in 2022, to really jump up and be that guy. I love the good tight end in Chigakonkwo.
He sucks.
Will Levis, second-year quarterback, started to make some moves last year as a rookie, and you could see why they like him. Bringing in Tony Pollard as a runner to go with Tyjae Spears going into his second year. Are they Derrick Henry? No, but how many people are? So you just have to say, okay, this duo is going to have to do it for them. Then on defense, they drafted Tavondre Sweat, the nose tackle, out of Texas in the second round. And I'll be honest with you, I think most of the people around the league weren't going to jump on Tavondre Sweat that early. But we had a run on defensive tackles in the draft, and you were about to run out of those types of guys. And Tennessee, he fits what they're looking for. They want that nasty, tough mauler type of a player. And they jumped on him in the second round. Others would have waited. But Tennessee's like, no, he fits our profile. We're about to run out of those guys anyway. This works for us. And he comes over, and now he helps anchor that defense right next to Jeffrey Simmons, who's an all-pro. Can you get Harold Landry back in form off the edge?
Nope.
Double-digit sack guy before he blew his knee out. I love Chidobe Awuzie coming in at corner.
Nope.
L'Jarius Sneed coming in at the other corner and can play nickel if you want him to, because he's a terrific player that way. I just like the atmosphere. I like where they're headed. It feels like things are solidified there in terms of people can relax. This is my job. Go do it. And I think Brian Callahan will be one of those rookie head coaches who is ready for the job. You know what I mean, Bruce? Like, he's been prepping for this since the day he was born.
Boy, I tell you, that couldn't have been read better off of Titan stationery. And that was the tale that was sold to everybody this offseason. And what percent of that has come to fruition? 1%? Like maybe Latham, and Latham's been awful the last 3 games. But everything there's like, oh my God, look at them. I mean, L'Jarius Sneed and Chidobe Awuzie and Tyler Boyd. And I mean, hey, nobody else wanted Devondre Sweat that early, but the Titans, they knew. And Brian Callahan, he's ready for this job. He's not going to be in over his head. Just so much sunshine was pumped. And here we are on December 13th, or excuse me, week 13, December 10th. And they are out of the playoffs. They didn't even have a right tackle. And yet, so much sunshine. One texter says, I'll take the GM job next year. At least I would get a right tackle and have a better offensive line. Remember, 49% of the people in the poll we ran said that they'd rather have me be GM than what they have now. 615-737-1025. Coming up next. Speaking of the Titans, this morning, I listened to Robbie and Rexford, and I heard a lot of talk about Brian Callahan. Boy, people are worked up about Brian Callahan. But is Brian Callahan who people should be talking about? We'll get to that next. Stillman and Company, 1025, 1063 The Game. Stillman and Company, 102.5, 106.3 The Game, streaming live on Twitter, Twitch, YouTube, and Facebook Live. We are live from the Busy Bee Plumbing, Heating, and Air Conditioning Game National Studios, Bridgestone Arena, Preds, and Calgary Flames tonight, 7 o'clock, right here, 102.5 The Game. And again, bring a toy to the game for Toys for Tots. Barry Trotz will be here at 5 o'clock. So this morning, I heard on Robbie and Joe, I heard all the talk about Brian Callahan. Brian Callahan this, and Brian Callahan that, and Brian Callahan hot seat, and should Brian Callahan be fired, and how much is Brian Callahan's fault? And I heard all the calls and all the texts, and it was loaded talking about Callahan this, Callahan that. And I thought to myself, am I the only person in Nashville who thinks the problems with the Titans aren't really about Brian Callahan? Like the fact that this team sucks so bad that maybe Brian Callahan is not a driver of why they stink so bad, but merely a passenger. Brian Callahan, even with this, and I'm just going to say this just to be straight, even with this awful roster without a right tackle that Chad Brinker and Rand Carthon put together, he should have beaten the lowly Jags on Sunday with their backup quarterback, and I'm not arguing that. I mean, that was a terrible loss on Sunday to Jacksonville. Those are the kind of games that, like, man, you don't lose. I asked Floyd one time. I got dumped like the day of a really big show, and I was very sad. And I asked Floyd, I said, when you were in the NFL and something bad happened in your personal life, this was during a commercial break. I said, something bad happened in your personal life. How did you block that out and focus on football? And he looked at me and he said, well, I told myself, I feel bad now, lose 3 in a row, and then ask yourself how you feel. And that is, again, life in the NFL. And you can't lose that game to Jacksonville. So I'm not going to pretend like Brian Callahan shouldn't have won that game and fans shouldn't be mad at Brian Callahan about that. But as far as 3-10 out of the playoffs, is Brian Callahan really the problem? Because to me, the idea that he is ludicrous. They were terrible last year. Rand Carthon says he contractually has control of the roster. I'll assume that that's true. They didn't get a right tackle. Whose fault's that? That's not Brian Callahan's fault. They traded for L'Jarius Sneed. And while everybody knew he was an injury concern, including us before they traded for him, the Titans said, it'll be fine. That's not Brian Callahan's fault. They let Denico Autry's 11.5 sacks walk out the building without any attempt at replacing them. Again, that's not Brian Callahan's fault. You can argue, hey, Brian Callahan was a part of the roster construction and they listened to Brian Callahan. But again, the buck doesn't stop with him when it comes to the roster, especially if Rand is telling the truth and he has contractual control. They don't have a starting tight end. That's not Brian Callahan's fault. And even if Callahan is a bad coach, which the early returns sometimes aren't looking good, but I'm not sure he's a bad coach. Isn't that an indictment of his bosses who handpicked him to be the guy to replace Mike Vrabel? They circled him and said, this is our guy. Mike Vrabel's no good. This is our guy. And so even if Callahan is a bad coach, doesn't that reflect poorly on the management that highlighted him as the savior? So we can talk about Callahan until the cows come home. But are you really telling me with a straight face that you think the problems with the Tennessee Titans are because of Brian Callahan? They told us last year when they fired Vrabel and promoted Rand and Chad, they told us Vrabel was the problem. Every single person outside of Nashville did not believe that. And the thing that's crazy is the way you got yourself into this mess wasn't because of John Robinson, wasn't because of Mike Vrabel, and it wasn't simply because of Amy Adams Strunk, but it was because of all of them. Robinson got arrogant, locked his door to everybody, and decided he could make every decision. And that led to Caleb Farley. And that led to the Julio Jones trade. And that led to Mike Vrabel was just as arrogant, thought he could name Jared Stillman as the offensive line coach, had a bunch of Fred Flintstones walking around there. And he was like, we'll coach them, I'll show you. Arrogance. And Amy Adams Strunk, who's never picked anybody to do anything in football, Amy Adams Strunk thought she could handpick a GM and handpick a coach and take the team to greatness. Arrogance. And all of these problems, whether it's Amy or Robinson or Vrabel or Rand or Chad, all of this happened before Brian Callahan showed up. And so now you're terrible. And you've been on this decline since the Cincinnati game. You've been on this decline. Albeit you did start 7-3 and you were a contender in 2022 before Danico Autry got hurt and then Amy Adams Strunk went Leroy Jenkins on the whole thing. But you mean to tell me that you think that the reason why this team's as bad is because Brian Callahan? I don't get it. Like, do you think that if Mike McDonald was the head coach, that you'd be 10-3 instead of 3-10? I don't think that. I don't think there's a single coach in the NFL that could have this team with a winning record. So again, when I hear all the talk about Callahan, I just shrug it off because again, I think the problems with the Titans are far beyond that of the coach. I said it last year when I said they need to clean house and they need to start over and they need to bring in an experienced football guy who has run an organization to run this organization. And they said, no, Jared, Mike Vrabel was the problem. And now the team's worse. And some people's response is Brian Callahan is the problem. Am I the only person that thinks that makes zero sense? And again, I'm not arguing that Callahan's a good coach. I have no idea. The evidence right now would probably lean towards me thinking he's not. But again, to think he's the only problem, that doesn't make any sense at all. And are there problems that I look at him and I'm like, you couldn't have gotten a more experienced special teams coach? You've got nobody on your staff with experience except for your father, who's the offensive line coach. Really? But again, I don't think that having Mike Mularkey and his old pawpaws in here as coaches would make this team 10-3. I do think he'd be better, but I don't think he'd be 10-3. And so when I hear all the complaining about Callahan, I'm like, this was a mess before Callahan got here. How's it any different? And yet, he's the guy you see on Sunday, and he's the guy who answers questions at the press conference. So he's the guy, for some reason, people point the finger at. And I do not get it. If you do not see that the problems with the Titans are above Brian Callahan, just like they were above Mike Vrabel, you do not understand the NFL. And I cannot help you. 615-737-1025, which is our phone number, 615-737-1025. So, of course, I think the problems start with the owner and they funnel down. And I think GM, president, I think that's all part of it. But when it comes to what's next for the Titans, I'm stunned at how many people don't agree with me. I'm serious. We'll get to that next. Stillman & Company, 102.5 The Game.
there's some temptation to fire, but I don't think they should fire anybody. I think you got to have some stability for a while. But the self-preservation element concerns me, and I think it will be in full on mode for Rand in particular, and that the moves that they will make, there's going to be a huge temptation to make moves that are going to serve the 2025 Titans and not necessarily the long-term future of the Titans.
Well, some would argue that
That's a
happened.
question
Yeah.
I would love to ask Rand Carthon, but we're not going to hear from him until it's mandated.
PK saying, I would bring everybody back for stability, but I think if you do, they're going to screw it up. That doesn't give me a lot of optimism. So every time we get around an election, half the people think one thing, the other half think the other way. And a lot of people that vote a certain way cannot understand how somebody else can vote the other way. And it doesn't matter which side of the aisle you're on. Trust me, you know. You probably got friends that are like, how could you vote that way? I mean, my God. And yet, again, roughly half the people vote one way and the other half vote another way. And it's every election. But you still don't understand that half the people feel it. So there is something that I just don't understand how all these people disagree with me about. And that is the Titans and the front office and cleaning house at the end of the year. The amount of people that think that Rand Carthon and Chad Brinker should return, it shocks me. Joe Rexrode on the morning show puts all the blame on their feet and says, I wouldn't fire him. I'm like, what? Like, guffaw? How? Kaharski at PK.com wrote, quote, the Titans' best course is to let Callahan grow and to remind themselves and him of the reasons they hired him, for him to conduct a thorough autopsy on the season, and for Carthon and Brinker further along in their tenures to step it up and provide him with a lot more. Paul's telling you, he thinks everybody should return next year. I cannot believe, and again, I think that Rexrode and Kaharski live out in left field a lot of the time anyway, but I still cannot believe how many people think it is a good idea to bring Rand Carthon and Chad Brinker back when everything they've done, for the most part, has been an abject failure. Ian, I bet you think they should bring them back, don't you?
I think everybody should come back one more year.
Oh, God! Not you!
I'm good with one more year.
No! Oh, no!
And see how it goes. Yeah.
Here's what's going to happen, and I guarantee it. Dun, 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 dun. Though I don't know if there's like a demarcation here to officially guarantee. I guess I'll just say make the playoffs because they're already out for the playoffs this year. If you bring Rand Carthon and Chad Brinker back in the same capacities and they do the same things where they don't go to the Senior Bowl and tell us that it's great that they didn't, or they do go to the Senior Bowl and they tell us it's great that they did, and everybody plays Barney music the whole time in the facility and they kiss each other's ass all off season and whatnot. Blow the sunshine throughout the course of the year. Training camp, they're on their way to the Lombardi Trophy. If you do this, I guarantee you'll be in the exact same spot next year that you are this year. Because you were in the same spot last year. Except nobody at this point next year will accept blame for John Robinson or Mike Vrabel. So what that will make you is the Giants. That's what you'll be. You will be the New York Giants, where there really is no explanation for why they suck so bad, except for the fact that Joe Shane, their general manager, and John Mara, their owner, are both total boobs. And I might be wrong, because I've been convinced of a lot of things over the years and have been wrong, but I've been right about this since the day they fired John Robinson. And yet, so many people want them back. Like media people that should know better want them back. And I do not get it. I do not understand. What have they done? Ian, what have they done that makes you think they're going to be good next year?
Well, I don't necessarily know that, like, hey, I'm like yearning to have them return. I just don't know if I want to get on this whole like carousel of constantly firing all the time. I'd like to see him play out a little bit and just to see.
Yeah, I'm not willing to take the risk of this being I'm not doing the season again, which is what I think it is more likely than not. That it's going to be, again, I lived through 2023. It was awful. I lived through 2024. It's been awful. I don't want to do this again. That's what the Giants are doing. I watched the Giants Hard Knocks, where they sat down and Joe Shane and they had all these plans and the draft pick and free agency, and we're going to build the team and we're going to let Saquon Barkley leave and they're even worse now than they were last year. They're a friggin' joke. Meanwhile, the Broncos had their Fakakta implosion when they spent all the picks and the money for Russell Wilson and they brought in Nathaniel Hackett and they're like, no, get rid of this. Bring in somebody who knows what they're doing. They bring in Sean Payton and now they're good again. I'm not doing this anymore. So I think every media member has to put it out there right now. Would you bring them back or would you not? And if you bring them back, you own this next year. The same way I will own it, the way I promised from the very beginning. I promised that if they turned it around, that I'd be the first person this year to put my hand up and say, I was wrong. Now, I haven't had to do that because they haven't, and I've been right. But I want every media person, do you think they should come back? And if next year is the same as this year, which I think it is inevitable that it will be, then you all have to own it. The same way that nobody's owning the fact that everybody in the media told me, Nicholas P. Ferrer, a.k.a.
PT.
That PT was going to be fine at right tackle. I said, no. You all own it if you want these guys back. And I don't see what have they done that makes you want them to come back and makes you think that we will live through a better season next year. Phone line driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com. Lincoln in the Borough is up next, 615-737-1025. Lincoln, go ahead.
Hey, Jared. So I was going to talk about Brian Callahan. After listening to this segment, you just did. I really want to talk about Rand for a second. I can't help but feel like Titans fans liked some of the moves that he made in the moment. Like, for instance, I liked the Skronsky pick when it happened because he was high on people's draft boards. So I was like, oh, he must be good. I liked the L'Jarius Sneed trade because I thought it was a steal. I'll admit I was wrong about those things. And you know what? I think that's okay because I'm a fan. But I also think it's okay that we can criticize Rand for making these moves because he is the GM. It is his job. I want the GM to know better about making these kind of decisions than I do or, like, say, other Titans fans do because he is supposed to know what he's doing. Anyways, thank you for letting me on, Jared.
So I'm going to tell you the one that really gets up my ass when it comes to that. Thank you, Lincoln. And that's the right tackle thing. And I'm not going to tell you the story again because you've all heard it, but it's like, what happened at right tackle? And everybody has kind of a different excuse if you want to make an excuse. Like the one excuse I hear all the time is, you couldn't fix everything in one offseason, Jared. Okay. Or you could have not signed Jamal Adams and not signed Quandre Diggs, and you could have signed a right tackle. You could have signed a nose tackle instead of drafting one at 38, and then you could have used that pick on a right tackle. The Ravens' right tackle was taken at the end of the second round. You could have done that. You could have swapped fourth-round picks for Morgan Moses. You could have signed Jermaine Illuminor in free agency. There were options at right tackle. Were any of them Trent Williams? No. But again, there were options. And the Titans said, no, we're good with PT. And everybody has a different excuse. The first is they can only do so much in one offseason. We've already debunked that. The second was Bill Callahan said that he could coach him. But the problem with that is Bill Callahan didn't know PT. Bill Callahan wasn't here last year. Bill Callahan wasn't around him in the building every day. Didn't see how he reacted to the gambling suspension. Didn't see how he played when he came back from the gambling suspension. Didn't know what was in the heart. Carthon and Brinker should have. They were here last year. I kept saying, like, guys, I've seen PT play. I've seen Duncan play. I know these guys can't do it. But Jared, Bill Callahan, I don't give a rat's ass. I know they can't. And to the caller's point, he's like, I like the L'Jarius Sneed trade, but I'm a fan. Like, I'm a fan too. I'm a talk show host who's never worked a day in the NFL. And I knew you couldn't do this at right tackle. The same way I knew you couldn't put Aaron Brewer at center. I knew it. And they were like, no, Jared. And that's the kind of stuff where, again, like, I'm not telling you that I could do a good job as general manager. But I'm telling you, I think I could do the same bad job or a better bad job than they're doing now. And so I don't care if you got excited about the moves. I got excited about Steven Stamkos. I mean, it may be that may end up being what gets Barry Trotz fired when all is said and done. But again, the competent stuff, like right tackle, I don't know. I don't know how they messed this up. Like, I don't know how they could have done that if they were here last year and they were paying attention, which kind of makes me think that they weren't paying attention, which is a problem. 615-737-1025. There is one thing I'm going to blast Brian Callahan about while I've been blasting his bosses. There's one thing I heard yesterday that is totally inexcusable, and we will get to it next. Stillman and Company, 1025 The Game.
For Brian Callahan, you're down there, it's 4th and 2. Try to go for it down there where you know with this game, points will be at a premium. Take the points. Winning still matters for these football teams. Say what you want. Our first-year head coach in Brian Callahan, prove that you can make the right decisions in terms of clock management and get points and give your team a chance. Don't sit there and feel like you have to go for everything. The only thing I'll say about this Tennessee game, for Brian Callahan, twice down there inside the 10-yard line, opportunities on 4th down to kick field goals. I know points are a premium when you look at this game. Those 2 field goals that he did not even attempt could have been a difference in this game.
Cower, just giving him the business. Cower's like, Brian Callahan, what the hell? Both at halftime and at the end of the game. So there's one thing Brian Callahan said yesterday at the podium that, boy, did it stick in my craw. And this ain't Rand's fault. This ain't Chad's fault. This ain't Amy's fault. This ain't none of their faults. This is Brian Callahan. And so Brian Callahan got up there yesterday to kind of explain his whole lot of positive things, bullcrap he said after the game on Sunday. And he kind of doubled down on it a little bit. And he said this.
At the end of the day, how do you have so many positive things over the course of the game? You hold a team to 0 points through 3 quarters. It's our second lowest rushing total defensively that we've allowed. Rushed for 126 yards and 5 a carry. We had 4 penalties. We had 2 turnovers. We didn't turn the ball over. We were 50% on 3rd down. There was all these things that would point to a game that you should have a chance to win. And we had chances, but the difference was for us in the game is we had really, let's call it 4 critical plays offensively that we needed to execute in a critical moment, and we did not. And that's the difference in the game. It's a game that had a chance to be a 20-10 game if we execute at best. If all the things work in our favor, that's where you end up. But we didn't do a good enough job in those critical moments of making the plays that are necessary to win a tight game.
Oh, if we had done this or if this hadn't happened, we would have won the game 20-10. And that takes me back to kind of one of the hallmarks of this radio program, one of the mission statements, one of the maxims. I don't know the right way to say this, Ian, but this has really become a core belief of the Stillman and Company program, a commandment, like the 10 ones that Moses had on Mount Sinai. This is a Stillman and Company commandment. And it goes back to what Eric Dickerson said to Jeff Fisher when Jeff Fisher was trying to bullcrap his way through a terrible LA Rams season. And Eric Dickerson said, no, we don't do that here. Here's what he said.
In LA, we want to win. We don't want to almost win. And they say, oh man, if we'd have had another quarter, if this wouldn't happen, I say, that's what losers say. And so I said, we need to win. I'm saying, and 8-8 and 7-9 is just not going to cut it. I said, this is LA, this is not St. Louis.
I'm sorry, but you played the worst team in the NFL. You need to win, not almost win. And when you get up there and you start saying, if this had happened, or like Eric Dickerson said, if we'd had another quarter, or if he had seen Chig, or if he didn't, then we would have won the game 20-10. That is straight up what losers say. And that's what this organization has become. Mike Vrabel never got up there and said stuff like that, and he said some crazy stuff. But again, this used to be the organization that we had pride in because they won no matter what. 90 guys over the course of a season, it doesn't matter. To now, well, if this hadn't happened and if we had done this, if we had made this play, we would have won against the worst team in the NFL. And I'm sorry, Brian Callahan, but that's what losers say. And I said the same thing yesterday about Levis and how he went up to the podium and made excuses about his AC joint and the ball was wet when he threw the pass to NWI. You save the excuses for me. I'll make the excuses for you when they're valid. When I think Rand Carthon's doing a terrible job and I think that you are not the problem, I'll say it. When I think that Will Levis had a decent game against Washington, everybody around him was terrible, I'll say it. I'll make the excuses for you when they're valid. But in this instance, there's no excuse for what happened on Sunday. And to get up there and tell me that, if we had made this play or if we made that play, again, like Eric Dickerson said, that's what losers say. You don't need to almost win against the worst team in the league when they come into your house. You need to win. And that is separate of Amy, Chad, Rand. That is loser talk from the head coach. And I will not stand for that. 615-737-1025, which is our phone number. One texter says, clean house, it's the only sane option. The only reason to bring them back would to let them screw up next year, get the number 1 pick, and go get Arch Manning. You know, can we let Arch Manning play football before we start saying that you need to go all in to have a terrible season next year to be able to get him? You know, when we were talking about Trevor Lawrence in this regard, tanking for him, and he had already won a national title and played for another. Maybe we can let that happen. Like, is that okay? Or do we already just have to assume because his last name's Manning that he's going to be great? For whatever reason. Texter says, they better fire the GM or else I'm out on this team. See, I think the fans, but I saw a poll yesterday, 47% of people saying that they should keep him. Now, again, that's not my poll. My poll thinks that 49% of the people think I'd be better than them. I saw a poll, 47% of people think, oh, no, give him another chance. And I'm like, oh, God, oh, no, no. One texter says, it sounds like PK, when it comes to keeping Brian Callahan, Chad Brinker, and Rand Carthon, wants consistency. But it's consistency in being a bad team. Great idea, Paul. Let's run with it, says the texter. So I said to my dad a couple weeks ago, whenever the last road game was, I guess that was Washington. We're watching the game, and I turned to my dad, and I said, and again, my dad has managed people for 40 years. And I turned to my dad, and I said, if you own the team, would you keep these guys running or would you fire them? And he goes, oh, I'd fire them. And I said, what would you say to the people? And I was thinking about Joe and Paul. When I said this to my dad, I go, what would you say to the people that are like, but Jared, we need stability. And we fired Robinson and we fired Vrabel. And if we just keep firing, then my dad goes, they do need stability, but they need good stability. What does bad stability get you? Like, I keep using the Giants as an example because nobody wants to be the Giants, right? Well, if John Mara keeps Joe Shane and keeps Brian Dable, and again, I think Dable kind of stays out of the personnel stuff. That was what I kind of gathered watching Hard Knocks. You know, he's a coach. But if he keeps those guys, there's a chance they get better. But based off of what? And then you have another bad season in a row. And that's where I'm at. And I agree with Dylan. Dylan's like, Paul says consistency. Well, I mean, what kind of bad consistency? What good does that do for you? Lenny says, fire the general manager, fire the coach, and hire some people that have experience at putting together a team and winning, and then I will be a little bit more patient. One texter says, huge mistake to take on a new GM and a new head coach into a front office and a team roster that has already been struggling to be competitive. Again, not necessarily a new GM because Rand was technically GM last year, but Rand had no prior GM experience running a team. Callahan, no head coaching experience. Nick Holes, no offensive coordinator experience. Denard Wilson, no defensive coordinator experience. Colt Anderson, no special teams experience. I mean, it's just crap. Nobody has any experience. Even Berg Nihil, he never ran another team before this. Where's the experience? Guys, whoa, no, you can't do that. Can't do that one. But everybody just got wowed by the, I can do it. I can fix it. I can't tell you how many people have said on Twitter or whatever over the years, I can do your job better than you when talking to me. And I think there might be a couple people out there that could do my job better than me. Again, don't know how many, but I'm sure there's a couple. But most of you, podcast.com, probably can't. Talk for 4 hours, 20 hours a week about the same stuff over and over and over again when the team is terrible and continue to do it and continue to push the stories and everything else. And I don't think you guys realize, like, that's not an easy job. And so when I hear people that have so little experience, I can do it. It's like everybody thinks I can do it. I can be president. Okay. 615-737-1025 on Stillman and Company. More your phones. Plus, there's a one guy that everybody thinks is great, and he might be. But right now, he's not. We'll get to it next. Stillman and Company, 1025 The Game. Let's talk about Hiller Plumbing, Heating, Cooling, and Electrical. Had Hiller at my home today. They do a fabulous job as always. Hiller's Cash for the Holidays promotion is back, and they're giving away cash for the holidays with select purchases. Get a $500 Visa gift card when you buy select new HVAC systems or a new whole home generator, or get a $250 Visa gift card when you buy a new tankless water heater. And these deals are only available until the end of the year, so schedule today by visiting happyhiller.com. Take advantage of Hiller's $99 drain cleaning this month as well, and there's no better time to take care of your home before the holiday guests arrive. And in my home, we'll be having a very special guest arrive very soon, so definitely have Hiller there right now getting all that work done. Make sure your systems are in great shape and take advantage of some free cash with Hiller Plumbing, Heating, Cooling, and Electrical, proud supporters of the Preds, the Vols, and Vandy. Hiller, call the Happy Face truck today.
So 1 second on the clock. Expect some type of Hail Mary play here by the Titans. But Hines Allen buries Levis, and the ball comes out. And Will Levis is hurt. Josh Hines Allen just absolutely crushed Will Levis. And Levis is grabbing his right shoulder, which was an injury that cost him 3 games earlier this year.
Yeah, he comes down really hard on his shoulder. J.C. Latham just beat completely.
J.C. Latham starting to become a problem, folks. And I read what Blake Bedingfield wrote at paulkaharski.com, the former Titans scout, director of college scouting. It seems like the league's starting to figure out J.C. Latham. In the last 3 games, J.C. Latham's pass block grade, according to Pro Football Focus, is 48.2. He's got 3 sacks allowed, 11 pressures, and on that play right there where Josh Hines Allen went right by him and hit the quarterback, he got the quarterback hurt. Joe Alt, again, a comparable player. You couldn't draft Joe Alt, so I'm not saying you should have drafted Joe Alt because they would have. But Joe Alt has allowed 1 sack and 4 pressures over the same period where J.C. Latham has allowed 3 sacks and 11 pressures. What's happened? I think the league is starting to figure Latham out. It's just like baseball. You go up there, they throw you fastballs, they realize, okay, now let's throw him the curveball, see if he can hit it. And with J.C. Latham, I think that's starting to become a problem. Because 3 games is a trend. And it's not like Washington has the best pass rushers, and it's not like last week. You know, when it comes to Jacksonville, they've got really talented pass rushers, but again, it's not like they played TJ Watt this past week. So I'm getting worried about J.C. Latham and his 48.2 pass block grade over the last 3 weeks, because that's not very good. And I know we're talking about bright spots in the season. Latham has been one for a lot of people, but he is either hitting a rookie wall or they figured him out, or I don't know. Let's go to Wayne, who's up next here on our program at 615-737-1025. Wayne, go ahead.
What's up, Jared? I just wanted to talk about Rand Carthon's draft classes the last 2 years. You were talking all this crap about acquisitions and he hasn't made good moves, but you look at the 2023 draft, first pick was Skoronski, which hasn't panned out great, but he's been solid.
He sucks.
And then we got Levis, and then Ty J in the 3rd round was, I think he was a good pick, and he was good last year.
It's been a total miss.
I don't think he's been used enough this year.
He doesn't
He's
start.
been unhealthy. Yeah, which I think that's more of a coaching problem and not a general manager problem. And then you go look at this year, look at Jarvis Brownlee in the 5th round. Snead got hurt. Brown put Brownlee in there. He's playing better than a first-team All-Pro, and he's locked down some good receivers.
He is not playing better than a first-team All-Pro, but I will say this.
Snead.
Well, L'Jarius Sneed was never a first-team All-Pro. So when you say that, like, I know what, hey, I'll tell you, but he was never that. Brownlee is played well. Outside of that, let's just go through it. And you tell me, is Peter Skoronski worth the 11th overall pick in the draft?
Maybe not, but
is he better than Jordan Addison? Is he better than Zay Flowers? Is he better than these other guys that you could have picked instead? Christian Gonzalez.
I don't think Gonzalez was available there.
Yes, he was. And the answer is no. Will Levis, is he the guy at quarterback?
I don't think we know that yet. He's shown a lot of potential.
I think I know the answer, and I think the answer is no. He didn't throw for 200 yards, got outplayed by Mac Jones last week. Tajay Spears never plays. So that's your first run at it. Now, your second run at it is Latham, who at times has looked okay, but hit a rookie wall. Sweat, who doesn't affect the quarterback at all. And you traded your 3rd round pick for Levis. And so you're telling me one corner who might be a starter in the NFL is what you're clinging on to with this general manager.
Hey, there's other picks in there that I think still have time to pan out. Like Sweat, you're right. He's not the best pass rusher, but against the run, him and Jeffrey Simmons are just a brick wall.
I know. Did you see the Washington game?
That all the other games except for that.
Okay. Thank you for your call, Wayne. Again, see, this is the problem. You just make up crap. You're like, oh, I mean, come on, man. I know Sweat doesn't rush the passer, which is what you draft somebody at 38 in order to do. I know he doesn't rush the passer, but he's the best against the run. Yeah. How about last week? Oh, no, not that one. I mean, again, forget about whether or not these guys belong on the team. Dylan Radence is a starting player. That was a miss of a pick by John Robinson, even though Radence starts. Second round, drafted as a tackle. He's a below average guard. Skoronski, in my opinion, is a below average pass protector and an above average run blocker. But again, pass protection and run blocking are not the same. There's more of a premium on pass protection than there is on run blocking. So I would say that Skoronski was a bad pick, especially when Jordan Addison is out there lighting it up. Bad pick. Will Levis, I'm sorry. He's not the guy. Sunday was the day for me. Well, that's a bad pick. You draft a quarterback in the second round, he needs to start. Sorry, and needs to be good. Is what it is. Spears never plays. I can't help you if the guy you drafted doesn't play because you signed somebody else over it. This year, Latham, I think Latham's a right tackle. And I think we're starting to see that with these speed rushers going around him. Sweat doesn't affect the quarterback. So great. A big fat run stuffing DT at 38. Woo! Brownlee, I will give you. I think Brownlee is a fringe starter. And I think it's better than a lot of the things that you've got. But stop selling me like these draft picks are superstars. Again, by this time, John Robinson had drafted an all-pro at right tackle in Jack Conklin, an all-pro at safety in Kevin Byard, who was on his way to leading the league in interceptions his second year in the NFL. Where's that on this team? But the reason why I was like, I let him go on and on that call is because I think a lot of people believe that stuff. 615-737-1025. I told you, I don't think Levis is the guy. And to me, yesterday, Sunday was confirmation. That was okay, if you can't throw for 200 yards against Jacksonville, if you can't see guys wide open in the end zone against the 32nd ranked defense in the NFL, if you can't win that game at the end of year 2, you're not going to be the guy. And I think there are a lot of people that are afraid to say it. We'll get to that next. Stillman and Company, 102.5 The Game. Stillman and Company, 102.5, 106.3 The Game, streaming live on Twitter, Twitch, YouTube, and Facebook Live. We are live from the Busy Bee Plumbing, Heating, and Air Conditioning Game Nashville studios. Bridgestone Arena, Preds and Flames tonight, 7 o'clock. Barry Trotz in 1 hour will be with us. And again, they've lost 7 in a row. Ian, has my camera gone out again?
Yes, it has.
Okay, I don't know what this is all about. We'll get that all figured out. But again, the Preds have lost 7 in a row, which is just inexcusable. I mean, and so we will sit down with Barry. Again, I have kind of made my piece when it comes to the coach and everything else of just thinking, hey, I think I'd make a change, but we will sit down and we will chat. We will have a discussion, all of those things. I do want to give away a pair of tickets, though, to see the Predators take on the Rangers at Bridgestone Arena on Tuesday, December 16th. So be caller 5 right now at 615-737-1025, which is our phone number to get in. And you will be seeing the Predators take on the Rangers, who are having their struggles of their own. So I want to get into this thing on Will Levis that may not be how you feel, but I am ready to call it. And I said this yesterday after they lost to Jacksonville, and I said, he's not the guy. You know, at some point, there's a moment, whether it's a coach, whether it's a quarterback, where you look at your quarterback and say, you know what? We can win because of this guy. And there is also a point in time where I think you look at it, and again, you got to be honest, but you look at it and say, you know what? You might be okay. You're not horrible. You're not one of these guys that just, as soon as you watch him, you're like, oh, get this guy off the screen. You know, Nathan Peterman. You're not the kind of quarterback, but you're not the guy. Do you know what I mean? And that's where I was with Levis. That Jacksonville team was ranked 32nd in the NFL in total defense. That team sucked. And he missed a wide open Chigakonkwo in the end zone. And he missed a wide open Calvin Ridley, which would have also been a touchdown. And he made excuses after the game. And I'm like, you know what? He's not the guy. And I think there are a lot of people that hear me say that, like, whoa, Jared, whoa, Jared, whoa, Jared. I think there's more that than there is, no, Jared, he is a franchise quarterback. And I think the whoa, Jared crew, when it comes to saying now, I feel like I can put my foot down, he's not the guy, I believe that comes from this fear that he's going to be what Sam Darnold is right now in Minnesota. This fear that he's going to be what Ryan Tannehill was for the Titans. Again, this weird fear that people have. And so I'm going to ask this question, which is, what is the likelihood at this point that I'm wrong about Will Levis? And I don't know where everybody else stands when it comes to Levis. Couldn't tell you. But what is really the likelihood? I don't know how Robbie feels. I don't know how Big Joe feels. I don't know how Chase feels. I know Joe will never put his foot down and say, like, oh, no, Levis is not the guy until Levis is already on another team. I don't know how Derek, Willie, Adam, I don't know if they're ready to say he's not the guy, although Derek, I think, has been pretty staunch lately that he doesn't think Levis is the guy. But how likely is it that I am jumping the gun on this? How likely is it that he actually is a franchise quarterback and it's the Titans who are holding him back? Will Levis is 5-14 as a starter. One of those wins, Miami this year, really belongs to Mason Rudolph. So he's really 4-14 as a starter. His QBR last year, an ESPN metric, was 33.2. This year, it's 30.5. It's bad. In 2 seasons, Will Levis has 2 fourth-quarter comebacks. Games like Sunday, ball in his hands at the end with a chance to win, and he's done it twice. And once was the Houston game this year, where, again, he didn't drive them down at the end of the game to kick a game-winning field goal or score a game-winning touchdown. He didn't do any of that. They just scored in the fourth quarter and won the game because Houston's kicker missed a field goal. In 2 seasons, he's got 2 fourth-quarter comebacks. The other one was at Miami last year. He's thrown for 300 yards in a game 1 time in 2 years. He's been hurt 5 times now since entering the NFL. And he's a second-year, 25-year-old quarterback. And again, watch Chig running across. He's wide open in the end zone for a touchdown. So I think there's a big fear amongst the fan base that is not ready to admit Levis ain't the guy because they're worried that he'll turn into Sam Darnold or Ryan Tannehill. But again, I ask this question. What evidence is there that that will happen? Because I'm not convinced that it's very likely that he's going to be that guy. When it comes to Tannehill, Ryan Tannehill was 15-17 his first 2 years in the NFL. Granted, that's not exactly Lamar Jackson being the unanimous league MVP in year 2. But I do think we can say, yeah, that's better than the 4 wins. Again, some people will say 4, some people will say 5, because Mason Rudolph did win that game at Miami. But that's better, if we're being serious here, that's better than the 4 wins that Levis has. And then, again, that's 15. That's 3 times the amount of victories that Ryan Tannehill had at this point than Will Levis has. It comes to Sam Darnold. He had a winning record in year 2 at 7-6, and he threw for over 3,000 yards and was 3 years younger than Will Levis is right now. Daniel Jones, who I don't think is the guy. Daniel Jones threw 24 touchdowns as a rookie. And so I'm not sure any of these guys, Tannehill, Darnold, or even Daniel Jones, I'm not sure any of these guys would succeed with this team, but I feel pretty confident Ryan Tannehill would find a wide open Chig for a touchdown in the end zone. It's year 2. Where's the progress? So when it comes to Levis, again, I'm not just going to sit here and say, he's terrible and has no chance at getting better. But that's not the question. The question is he the guy? And I feel pretty confident in saying that if he was going to be the guy, no matter how bad the coach is, no matter how bad the general manager is, he'd be better than 5-14. He'd throw for 300 yards in some of these games. Justin Herbert played on some bad teams early in his career. He threw for 5,000 yards his second year in the NFL. Levis couldn't even beat 32nd ranked Jacksonville. Ryan Tannehill, failure in Miami, 15-17 his first 2 years in the league, and he had 5 fourth-quarter comebacks. Levis has 2. So I'm ready to say Levis isn't the guy. I'm ready to say he's not going to ever be a franchise quarterback. Am I 100% certain in that? No. But how many things in life are you really 100% certain of? So when I add everything up, whether it's what I'm watching when he's playing, or whether it's the record, the yards, the QBR, the everything else, I'm ready to say that I feel confident that the odds that he's secretly the guy and that we just can't see it aren't very likely. So I feel comfortable in saying that he's not going to be the guy. 615-737-1025, which is our phone number, 615-737-1025. And Bill Barnwell at ESPN says, who is going to be the quarterback for the Titans in 2025? We'll get to that next. Stillman and Company, 1025 The Game.
the Chig miss, you bring Jeff on and you have him run out to that right side.
Yeah.
Where was Chig in the pattern there? Was he supposed to be the lead?
He's 2 in the pattern. So it's Jeff to Chig, and you have Nick on the end line as kind of the if everything collapses down on top or the guy runs with Chig, you kind of have 2 runners away from the play action side. And then we had released John Ajoku on a route that, again, isn't really intended to go to him, but helps manage all the times we put John in the game that he at least releases at some point. And so he's really not part of the progression. Jeff is the first read. If he were to be for some reason wide open, you throw it to Jeff and you snap right to the backside, which is where Chig was on that particular play. It's a style of play we hit earlier in the drive to Wiley in a very similar, very, very, very similar play, just out of different personnel grouping.
So do you know why he didn't get to Chig as the second option in the read?
No, I think the way he explained it was he just his eyes came back, he picked up Nick first and thought that was, he didn't quite feel Chig for whatever reason, and ended up taking the throw to Nick. But we got to hit that throw on a 4th down that's open in the red zone.
That's as close as Brian Callahan will ever get to throwing somebody under the bus, saying like, "Don't blame me, put that one on Levis." But again, you can't. These razor thin margins in every game, whether you're playing Jacksonville or somebody good, are so small. You can't do that. Cannot miss wide open guys in the end zone. And so again, I'm there with Levis. We've got 18 games. He goes out against the 32nd ranked defense in the NFL. He doesn't throw for 200 yards. He's injured again. So now it's like, 5 times in 2 years he's been injured? He got injured in Minnesota at practice in 2023. He got injured in the JV Texans game. He got injured in the other Texan game. He got injured in the Miami game. He had to sit out a couple of weeks after the Indy game, and now he's hurt again. He's not the guy. It's time to move on and try to find the guy one way or another. Phone lines are driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com at 615-737-1025. One texter says, on admitting that Levis isn't the guy, I'm not worried about him going somewhere else and becoming a good quarterback. I'm just worried about this franchise being set back an additional 2 or 3 years. What does that mean? So the texter says, I'm not worried about Levis going somewhere else and being good. I'm just worried about this team being set back 2 or 3 years.
Starting over. New quarterback.
So this texter is saying, I'm worried they're going to draft another quarterback, and that quarterback's going to be bad. And because that quarterback's going to be bad, I don't want any part of it.
Or growing pains.
I mean, so should Washington have kept Sam Howell last year?
I don't know.
Or should they have drafted Jaden Daniels?
Looks like Daniels looks pretty good.
This idea, I mean, I'm so tired of everybody out there being like, well, I mean, if we fire Rand and we hire somebody worse, then what are we going to do? You don't hire people. Like, you do not hire people to be bad. You do not keep bad employees because, well, it could be worse. And in the case of Levis, how much worse could it actually be? Like, 5-14 is not good, and I understand that, but I'm worried that if we get somebody else, we'll be worse than 5-14. What's that do for you? I don't get that. I do not understand that line of thinking. One texter says, so on 4th down, they had John Ajuku, Jeff Simmons, Nick Vannett, and Chig Okonkwo running routes. Yeah, I thought that play call was stupid too. But again, he was wide open.
Wide open.
Like, forget about the stupidity of Brian Callahan doing that on 4th down.
Yeah, and
which,
it did
again,
look like
agree.
It was weird that they were in the same place at the same time, Chig and Vannett,
So the follow-up to the cut we played, Callahan said that when the ball was being thrown, they weren't in the same spot. But then when the ball threw, Chig moved over towards Vannett.
No, it makes sense. I think the explanation makes sense. It just looked weird at the end,
So, again, if the guy's wide open, the quarterback has to hit him. And there was another touchdown, too, that he missed. There was a wide open throw to Ridley in the end zone, and he just didn't even see him. Didn't look at him. And on the final play, the NWI ball, Ridley was wide open at like the 2-yard line and would have walked into the end zone, and Levis didn't look at him. Taylor says, would you have said the same thing about Josh Allen not being the guy after year 2? Genuinely curious. Now, I did not think Josh Allen was good after his second year, but let me say this. Josh Allen's team was 10-6 and made the playoffs. And again, a quarterback record is not 100% on the quarterback. Joe Burrow is a winner, and Cincinnati stinks. In relief. He's won 4 games. Allen won 10 games in year 2. And again, if Levis had thrown the touchdown to Chig, or if Levis had seen Ridley and thrown the ball to him and he had cut up and run into the end zone for a touchdown, Levis's stats would have been roughly the same as they were on Sunday, which were terrible, just add in a touchdown. But you would have won. And that would give you another little check mark. And he can't win that game against that team. That's the problem. And Josh Allen, at this point in his career, was winning football games. One texter said, according to you, Mariota was the real deal. Now a year of Levis learning a new system behind a trash offensive line, and Levis is not. Mariota had 26 touchdowns and 9 interceptions and won 9 games in his second year in the NFL. And he didn't even end up panning out. Like every single one of these guys had a better start to their careers than Levis. The one guy that it's like, okay, Steve Young was downright horrendous in Tampa Bay. And he obviously became Steve Young. But let's not get too far over our skis here when it comes to say, well, Mariota sucked. And so just because he was good at the beginning and he sucked means that now Levis sucks, but he'll turn it around. I don't have that. Ryan says, I don't believe Levis will become the guy, but with this offensive line he's playing behind, I don't even think Brady would look pedestrian. I don't like the quarterbacks coming out this year, so I'd rather fix the offensive line and get Levis some competition and see what happens next year than move on and still have the same terrible offensive line and repeat the cycle. You know what's crazy? And the Commanders are an example of this. You can fix the offensive line and quarterback at the same time. It is not like the NFL says you may only fix one problem with your team at one time. You can fix 2 things at one time. I didn't know if you knew that, by the way. But this idea that, oh, well, we can only fix quarterback and we can't fix the line, that doesn't exist whatsoever. Trevor is up next on the program. His reaction to Sunday's disaster, and as he is down on Levis as I am, we'll do it next. Stillman and Company, 102.5 The Game. Stillman and company. Ian, it throws me off with that new SEC on ABC music.
Oh, you love it.
I first of all hate it. Hate it. But again, it throws me off for whatever reason. Trevor Matich joins us on the program, presented by Houston Clinic Orthopedics, when experience matters. Trevor, we do have the college football playoff, which we will get into with you at the bottom of the hour, but I do want to start with this, which is I'm out on Levis after Sunday. I feel like midway through his second season in the NFL, really towards the end of his second season, Will Levis needs to be hitting those throws, in the end zone to wide open guys. Didn't throw for 200 yards. I thought he got outplayed by Mac Jones. He's hurt again, which is not a good sign in terms of whether or not somebody could be a franchise quarterback. He's got 4 wins as a starter, and we're in December. Look, I don't think it's his fault that the team sucks so bad, but I do think he's part of the problem, not part of the solution. I'm ready to move on. Your thoughts?
I agree with you everywhere except the ready to move on part. But when it comes to how he's performing, Jared, you're totally right. He has been awful in key moments that decided games. You go back earlier in the seasons to just boneheaded turnovers in 1 touchdown losses to the Bears and the Jets. Would they have won those games had it not been for those boneheaded turnovers? I don't know, maybe not. But they certainly contributed to the teams losing. Other times during the course of the season, Levis contributed to the team losing. And then we have the perfect example against the Jaguars Sunday, right? Where they ran the ball really well. They didn't turn it over, but they couldn't throw it very well. Even so, with all the problems that they had on offense, the Titans were in position twice to win this game. Once was in the second quarter. It was 4th and goal at the 2. This is one that I'm sure you've talked about a lot, where he had Chigakonkwo open in the end zone. What happened on that play was that Chig and Vanette, 2 tight ends, were lined up on the right side pre-snap. Vanette went to the back of the end zone and crossed from right to left and had a defender crossing with him the entire way. Chig went to just over the goal line and crossed right to left, and nobody marked him. He was wide open, and the ball went to the back of the end zone to the covered guy, not to the guy who was wide open for 20 yards as he was running across. Now, for all the bad things that happened to this team, for all the bad protection, for all the mistakes that have been made, Levis was in position with good enough protection to throw a touchdown pass to a wide open guy in the direction that he was looking when he came from right back to the left. And he didn't see the wide open guy and threw to the covered guy behind him. So that's one missed opportunity. And the other one I'm sure you've talked about as well is at the end of the game with just over a minute to go. It was 4th and 3 at the 9. This is where he threw to Nick Westbrook-Akine incomplete in the back corner of the end zone. And he had Calvin Ridley wide open in his line of sight where he was looking towards the right to NWI deep. There was Ridley right there standing at about the 3-yard line, wide open. He could have just caught the ball and turned up and nobody could have stopped it from scoring a touchdown. On that play, Ridley was lined up on the left, and he went up a few steps and then just did a little crossing route across, and the defense failed to pick him up as he crossed from zone to zone. And you saw the quarterback, Will Levis, apparently thought that he saw Westbrook-Akine flash over there on the right on his deeper route into the end zone. Well, he did flash because it was zone coverage. He ran between 2 zone defenders in the short zone, came into an open spot, and then kept running and was picked up by a deeper zone guy. And so Levis saw him flash open behind the first guys, but didn't understand that he was going to be tightly covered by the time the ball got there. So he threw it, and threw it incomplete. Even though he had a wide open guy in Ridley right in front of him, he could have scored that touchdown. These are 2 places where he had the time to throw. He had the guy to throw to, not some guy on the opposite side of the field, but a guy in the direction that he was throwing. That if he knew what the defense was doing, what the weak spots of the defense were, and who would then be open based on those weak spots, he could have scored not 1, but 2. Instead, he missed them both and threw to a guy that was not the wide open guy. And I've got to look at that and say, okay, Will Levis for all the things that he's done this year, for all the things he's got better at this year, still doesn't have a feel for what he's looking at. And so he tantalizes us with those big, beautiful throws from time to time. But if you can't know who's going to be open based on what the defense is doing. In other words, you don't look and see an open receiver, throw it to him. You know that based on the coverage and the safeties over here a little bit and the flat guys up a little bit too close to the line of scrimmage, you know who's going to be open without even seeing him. Then you turn and throw it. He has not shown that ability yet, and that is something that if he can't grow into, he can't play.
Trevor Matich is with us, presented by Houston Clinic Orthopedics, when experience matters. Trevor, on that front, I think at the end of the year, the Titans are officially out of the playoffs. I think at the end of the year, they should clean house. I think they should fire the general manager. I think they should fire his president of football operations. I don't really know who's in charge between the two of them, but I say get rid of both of them. I think they should change quarterback at the end of the year, and then let the next guy get a football guy with experience, general manager experience, to run the team, and then let him decide what to do with Callahan. Keep him. If he doesn't, let him go. Whatever. I think it's time to hit the reset button. Do you think that's fair given where the Titans are right now?
I think most people agree with you, Jared, but I see it differently because I know that head coach Brian Callahan's taken a lot of heat for saying that there were a lot of positive things coming out of this Jaguars game. But the truth of it is they're not far away from being about 500 right now. You know, we talked about those three games, the Bears, the Jets, and then this one, the Jaguars, where they were just one or two plays in each of those games away from winning them. And bad teams don't win those games. I get it. Good teams do win those games. But it's not like the whole team melted down and was ridiculous. The defense is, still, I believe still, the top statistical pass defense in the league. And from a yards per rush allowed standpoint, they're in the top 4 or 5 or 6 in the top tier in the league. So the defense with no offensive support has been playing very well, even though the two big free agent acquisitions at corner have both been injured most of the time they've been here. So the defense has done really, really well. And the offense, Tony Pollard has been a revelation. He's been one of the best free agent pickups in the entire cycle across the entire league. And they've upgraded the receiving core, even though Calvin Ridley hasn't performed as consistently as they would have wanted. They're still better than last year. They've got more talent on the offensive line with the drafting of J.C. Latham, although he's had some big struggles here, especially in recent games. And so I think this is a team that, from a talent standpoint, is putting pieces in there. And even without a right tackle, even with the quarterback being too mechanical and not showing a lot of instinct, they still were in position to win some of those games had the quarterback just either made a good play or did not make a bonehead play and then throw in, some special teams debacles early in the season and stuff like that. So it's not like everything that they're doing is completely hopeless. You can point to this play, this play, this play. Now, again, I get it. Bad teams don't make those plays, but you can look at where they need to improve and say, yeah, that right there, that's fixable. And this is where the asterisk is with Will Levis when it comes to should he be the guy next year. He has not proven that he should be the guy next year. But I think that he should be back next year to compete for a starting job. The question is, who do they bring in? Where do they get him to add depth to that quarterback room to then have that competition go on? Because if that position doesn't get figured out, it doesn't matter what the right tackle position is.
So your argument is they shouldn't clean house because if they didn't lose to these bad teams, Chicago's fired their coach, the Jets have fired their coach, Jacksonville is the worst team in the league, they're going to fire their coach. If they hadn't lost to those terrible teams, then they might be closer to 500. That's the argument you're making.
That's exactly the argument I'm making. And the way that they lost to those teams. Mistakes that are just fixable things, boneheaded things, and things that probably wouldn't happen the second time, you would hope. But either way, that's why I would. If the team were heading the wrong direction, were getting blown out all the time, and you didn't see progress at all,
But
then I would say,
blown
okay.
out pretty much every good team they play. They got blown out by the Chargers. They got blown out by the Lions. They got blown out by the Bills. They got blown out by the Commanders.
Sure, and that's what happens to bad teams. But right now, my standard for them is to be competitive against the mid-tier of the NFL. They're not going to be that competitive against the top tier. They're just not ready for that yet. But if they're competitive against the mid tier and then win the bottom tier, and that's really where the problem was, they lost games to the bottom tier, and that's why we're talking about it the way we are. But again, you've got to look at it at the way they lost it. Is that fixable? You've got to look at the locker room. Are the players playing hard for the coach, or have they quit on the coach? These are reasons you would get rid of the coach if you think that he can't wrangle the locker room, right? But right now, as I look at this team, and believe me, I hear what the defensive players are saying publicly after this game, that it sounds like there's some public criticism of what the offense is doing, and frankly, I don't blame them. But at the same time, I don't see a hopeless team heading in the wrong direction. I see a team that's made a lot of horrible mistakes, that needs upgrades in several key positions, and that needs to come together and play more tightly. And I'm not ready to throw everything out until I see a little bit more.
Wow.
Yeah. And believe me, Jared, that's not because I've got a glass half full. That's not what it is.
I am kind of stunned. Not stunned that you don't want to clean house, but I'm stunned with the logic. Again, like, the Chicago Bears almost beat the Lions. And if they hadn't mismanaged the clock at the end of that game, maybe they would have beaten the Lions. But to me, that was a fireable offense for Matt Eberflus. And I'm glad he got fired the next day, because he deserved to be fired, even though they almost won that game. Like, they almost beat Jacksonville. Jacksonville's awful. Like, almost beating Jacksonville, that's not a good thing. That's a terrible thing.
It is a bad thing. I'm not trying to excuse it. What I'm saying is, how do you evaluate that based on what you do in terms of cleaning house? And if you look at that game and you say, okay, twice we had schemed guys wide open in the vision of the young quarterback, and he didn't see him either time. Are you saying we're going to clean house and get rid of everybody because of that? And then go back to the bad loss against the Bears, against the Jets, stuff like that. Those are one-score losses. Then there's others where they got blown out. You're totally right about that. A bunch of them where they got blown out. But at the same time, when you pull the trigger on getting rid of everybody and starting over again, if you just keep on doing that, you better have better people coming in, and not just be making the changes for the sake of making changes. And once again, what I look at is, were they in position to win some of these games that they lost? Had they win some of those games, would we still be talking about them this way? And are the reasons that they lost these specific games that we're talking about because the coach is no good, or because the quarterback made young quarterback mistakes? And I think it's the latter.
More with Trevor Matich on the other side, including the college football playoff is with us. We'll do that next. Stillman and Company, 102.5 The Game. Stillman and Company, Trevor Matich is with us, presented by Houston Clinic Orthopedics. When experience matters, the college football playoff is out. Trev, last year you and I screamed at each other over Alabama and Florida State. This year it's Alabama and SMU. And I got to say, I thought SMU belonged in. I don't think Alabama deserves to go to the playoff, but I'm not sure that I'd care that much if they had put Alabama in. Do you think that is our new reality in a 12-team and then soon to be 14-team playoff, which is if you're team 13, you don't really have a right to complain?
You're right about that. The thing is, I thought also that Alabama should have been in over SMU. The reason is that Alabama won 3 games against teams that finished ranked in the committee's top 25, including against number 2 Georgia. SMU doesn't have a single win like that. What they did have was a really good comeback in the ACC championship game against Clemson, who was ranked, I think, 17th at the time. And the committee was impressed by that. But it really comes down to what the committee is valuing the most, because Nick Saban, former coach of Alabama, has been all over the concept that it's hard to win a tough schedule. It's hard to win all those games. And so you should get more credit for winning tough games than for losing games. But the other side, in SMU's argument, is that Alabama lost to Vanderbilt 6-6, and they lost badly to Oklahoma, who's also 6-6, but Bama was just crushed by Oklahoma. And you can say that SMU doesn't have a loss like that. So what do you value most? The teams you beat or the losses that you had? I think the teams you beat are more important, and I think Alabama should have been in there. And you're right that now when it's only a 4-team playoff, then there's only 4 teams that are going to get a chance at it. And team number 5 might be good enough to win it all. If there's a 12-team playoff, well, team that's number 13 probably isn't good enough to win it all, although they might have a chance. And I think there's less emotion involved in leaving them out.
Trevor, is Georgia screwed without Carson Beck? I know they're the number 2 seed, although seeding, 5 might be the best seed in this entire thing. Are they screwed without Carson Beck because it looks like he's got the Brock Purdy injury?
They on paper are in trouble. The reason is that's an elbow injury, and if he's not able to throw the ball, they're in trouble for a couple reasons. One is that he's one of the most experienced quarterbacks in the field of 12, and experience is really important in big games. But at the same time, his backup, Gunnar Stockton, is a redshirt sophomore, so he's in his 3rd year in the program. He hasn't played a whole lot, but he's been around a whole lot. And it was a bit of an eye-opener to watch him in the SEC championship game against Texas when, he came in, at halftime in relief of the injured Carson Beck, because the way he ran was a little startling compared to the way Carson Beck runs. Carson Beck is not a threat to run the ball. He can run a little bit, but not very much. Gunnar Stockton didn't get a whole lot of rushing yards, but when he took off, the defense, they knew they were in trouble. And you couldn't take your eyes off the screen because you knew he had a chance to do some stuff. He had an 8-yard run down in the red zone that set up the game-winning touchdown in overtime.
Trevor, that interception he threw was horrendous.
It was horrendous. But when he took off on that run, he took off like a scalded squirrel, man. He just, something Beck could not do. The interception he threw was over to the right side earlier than that, and it was a terrible, horrible, awful throw. But I don't think it was because he doesn't have accuracy. It's because he made a really super bad decision. Yeah. And so he's got to avoid that. But my point is Georgia, are they in real trouble because it's Gunnar Stockton instead of Carson Beck, assuming that's the case? I think not so much, because what they lose in experience, they gain in the ability to run. And knowing that he will be the quarterback, they'll game plan that into it.
Trevor, do you think Bill Belichick is going to be the next coach at UNC? What do you make of that?
I don't know. It seems a little weird, doesn't it?
It would be terrible. There's no reason for Bill to go to UNC, and there's no reason for UNC to hire Bill. If you were picking right now and your choice was Oregon offensive coordinator Will Stein, and I'm biased because we went to college together and I'm friends with him, but he lit up the scoreboard on Saturday night. I think he's ready for a job. If your choice was Will Stein or Bill Belichick, who would you take to coach UNC right now?
We'll probably take Bill Belichick and hire Stein to be my offensive coordinator. Here's why, though, because they need some sort of a splash. They need a way to get the NIL pools to be fully funded and people to buy in to donate for NIL, because recruiting now is all about NIL. And so I look at what Coach Prime has done, Deion Sanders in Colorado. He's been able to because of the excitement to be associated with him, those people that have the deep wallets in that area are pouring money
so
into
you
the
think
NIL pool.
Bill, who built his entire brand on paying people less in New England, is going to get people to North Carolina by paying them more?
Yeah, because there's no salary cap. He can
Okay.
pay him as much as he can get
Catch
people to
fade.
donate to it. And if I'm North Carolina, I want that kind of a splash hire. Now, it might be better to hire Coach Stein from Oregon. He might be a better long-term coach, understanding the college system and the way things are right now. But at the same time, if you're North Carolina, the longer you're irrelevant, the harder it will be to build to get out of it. And if Belichick's able to come in there and do what Coach Prime did in Colorado for 2 years before he goes back to the NFL, then it was worth doing it. And by the way people are talking around Nashville, is anybody talking about Belichick coming to the Titans?
No, but that might be why Belichick. I don't think Belichick's ever going back to the NFL. If he goes to college, he's never going back to the NFL. He's going to college because he can't get a job in the NFL, and I think Belichick is going to get a job in the NFL. But I could be wrong.
Well, you're right. Where he's not going is Tennessee. You know, when you talk about the playoffs, I think the Tennessee-Ohio State game is fascinating because Tennessee runs the ball twice as much as they throw it. They're known as a big deep strike passing attack. But in SEC play, they don't throw it that much, and they don't throw it down the field that well. They did better in the last few games of the season against Mississippi State, UTEP, and Vandy. But, you know, I still wonder how they'll be throwing the ball against Ohio State. But they can pound the run. And on the other side of the ball, Ohio State's deep or offensive line is dealing with multiple injuries. They're still trying to shuffle guys around. That offensive line has been in flux and not very effective since they started to have to do that in October. And this defensive front of Tennessee is legitimately one of the best in the country. And so this is a winnable game for Tennessee. This is a very interesting matchup up there in Columbus.
Trevor, as always, great stuff. Appreciate you. We will talk soon.
Thanks, Jared.
Yep, Trevor Matich, presented by Houston Clinic Orthopedics, when experience matters. The Predators have lost 7 in a row. Barry Trotz will sit down with us next. Stillman & Company, 102.5 The Game. Stillman and Company, 102.5, 106.3 The Game, streaming live on Twitter, Twitch, YouTube, and Facebook Live. We are live from the Busy Bee Plumbing, Heating, and Air Conditioning Game Nashville studios. And we are at Bridgestone Arena, Preds and Flames tonight. The Preds have lost 7 in a row. They try to get back on the winning path. And we are joined by Predators General Manager Barry Trotz, presented by Porvu. Be ready when the puck drops in Smashville with your drink of choice in hand. Not only does Porvu have the best selection of wine, it's a one-of-a-kind selection you won't find anywhere else. Porvu, Indian Lake Boulevard in Hendersonville, just off Vietnam Veterans Parkway at Exit 7. Barry Trotz is with us. Barry, how are you?
Be better. I'm like you. I'm waiting for this game to start, so hopefully we can get on the winning track again.
So I'm going to ask you the question that everybody's talking about, which is the same question I feel like I've asked you like 8 weeks in a row.
Yeah.
The coach. So at some point in the league, teams usually trying to shake things up, get on the right path, they fire the coach. This team's tried everything. You've called guys up. You've moved guys around on lines. You've had guys go down to Milwaukee. You've tried everything but changing the coach. And the team's lost 7 in a row. And the team's down towards the bottom. And the team got 7 shots. 7 shots midway through the Montreal game. No goals. That's the worst team in the Eastern Conference. So why not make that change?
Well, I think it started right from the beginning. I brought Bruno to change the culture, change the way we play. I think he's a good young coach. Just like any good young coach or good young player, they got to develop. And I looked at us, and last time I was on this show, we're actually looking forward to that trip. The 3 games. I think we had points in, I want to say 8 of 11 games. I think in the last. And just before that trip, in 10 of those games, unfortunately, we lost 5 in overtime. I like the way we were playing defensively. We were doing that. I thought we were playing, getting a little more, a few more chances, all that type of thing. So we stuck with it, and we had a number of meetings. I thought our game in Toronto, we played a great road game against the number 1 team in the league at the time in Toronto, and they got us in the first couple of minutes of the third period. Unfortunately, we had some bad luck. As I say, the cloud's been all over us all year. Our pilot didn't show up. We get into Montreal, into our rooms about 3:30 in the morning, and we were sluggish out of the gates. And Montreal has been playing better of late. They get a quick young team, and we just couldn't generate enough to get to the other side. And this team is lacking some confidence. It's lacking a little bit of resiliency, which is disappointing. But when you get hit over the head a few more, as many times as we have, it's tough for those guys mentally. But at the same time, that's how you get better, and that goes for not only my coach but the players. And you look at during this last 7 games, we've lost a number of overtime games. Who's on the ice in the overtimes? They're top players. During this stretch, our power play has gone from probably top 10. I think a couple of weeks ago we were combined the best power play penalty kill when you combine them. We were like 118, which was number 1 in the league, but we were way down on the bottom, which is you don't see that in the National Hockey League. So the power play dried up, and who's on the power play? Our top guys. So we're only as good as our top guys, and our top guys haven't performed. And I know there's a lot of people, it's Stamkos, it's Marshall, so they haven't sort of assimilated yet. But it goes right through the whole lineup. I mean, you look at Tommy Novak. I mean, Tommy Novak he had a career year last year, not having anything this year. We had, I think, 5 or 6 guys who had career years last year. And so going into this season, we said we're probably going to have a recession of 15 to 20% from our guys. So let's fill those holes in. That was, I had to replace McDonough, Brady Shea. That's a wash. So we went and got Stamkos and Marshall, so some guys that could naturally finish. Hoping that Tommy Novak could step up. We get production through our whole lineup. Start assimilating some of our young guys, and then get that blend going. But this year we got off to a bad start, and we tried to get back to even, and it just hasn't happened. And then we start getting injuries, and it's getting away from us. So, for me, what we see in our team right now is how they react when we're where we are. I mean, we haven't been there. This team has been a regular playoff contender. When I started here, a year and a half ago or whatever, we made some bold moves, but we cleared out a number of players. I mean, the Ekholms, the Niederreiters, those really good players, because we wanted to be out of the mushy middle. What happened? Our guys responded, and we almost made the playoffs with a bunch of young guys. So we were still in that mushy middle. And then, next year we started at 5-10. As we talked, how is this going to go? I said, we might be in for some pain here. And that was part of the whole solution, that we might have to go through some pain, because we're very competitive people. And when you go through some of the pain to get those top centermen or those game-changing guys, you either got to trade for them and you got to give up a lot of assets, or you got to go get them in the draft, and you're going to go get them by not being very good. And right now, we're on pace to get a very good player. But that wasn't part of this year's plan. Was probably part of the trying to thread the needle, because we have a number of guys coming. I think we have potentially nine players are going to play in the World Juniors tournament, which is the most we've ever had in franchise history. So that's usually an indicator that you got guys playing. How high up will they play? That's to be seen. But they're 18 and 19-year-old, very good prospects.
Okay, so there are two things you kind of hit on there. You talked about how the team is lacking confidence and resiliency, and then you talked about how it's all the top guys that are kind of
not all the top guys. I mean, I can go back to Tommy Novaks and Colton Sissons and McCarron's. I can go right through our whole lineup. There's no question.
But as far as getting the best out of the top guys, and as far as the team being confident and being resilient, couldn't I argue that's the coach's job?
Well, I think you can't give players confidence. You can encourage them. You can give them the direction. It's really hard to give confidence. Confidence is something that personally you have to earn. Like, you have confidence doing what you're doing because you're good at it.
Sure. The difference between positivity and confidence, in my opinion, is one is I'm going to be positive. The other is I am confident.
Yes, and a lot of our guys have to earn that confidence, and you earn that confidence by your play, by if you're not scoring, you sort of give up on plays, or you get frustrated with plays, or do you fight through it? And we have a lot of frustration in our game. I mean, it started, we were talking before we went on air, we were talking about how the year started. We hit 6 posts, and Steve Stamkos hits the post with seconds to tie it up, or could have tied it up. And it's sort of been like that all year. I think we're in the 70s, 75 posts this year, and crossbars, and which is an insane number. And you look at even some of the losses. I can't even imagine. We got the puck in our top player sticks, be it Stamkos or Forsberg in overtime, and we miss the net and they go down and score. It's just been one of those things. So,
but was it bad luck that you got shut out at Montreal?
No, it wasn't bad luck.
You know what I'm saying? That's the hard part for me.
Yeah, no, those are frustrating, because the back-to-backs are tough. They are, especially for top guys that play a lot. Those can be tough. And I thought the Toronto game, we used a lot of energy in that game. We lost Ryan O'Reilly in the last shift of the game. Going to Montreal, we rolled into Montreal to our rooms at like 3, which it was just should have been there at midnight. We rolled in at 3 because the pilot and snowstorms and what have you. And we were a little sluggish out of the gate, and they got a goal, and now when you're squeezing it, it's not coming easy. That next goal, you're sitting on the bench going, you get a power play and you don't score. They get a power play and you're going, don't score, because we're not scoring. We got to keep it to 1. We got to keep it to 1. And it gets really hard. It's mentally, and you got to get really comfortable being uncomfortable. And we haven't got there yet. And it sort of surprises me, because we have a veteran group. We're starting to use some young guys, and LaRue, here's LaRue is a 21-year-old, and Svechkov's a 21-year-old, and they're not going to come in and be the game savers. They're going to be maybe give us a little bit of boost in terms of energy and new vibe, but it's still going to fall on our top guys. Our top guys are good players, but they collectively aren't playing as well as we need them to play to win hockey games night in, night out.
Barry Trotz is with us, presented by Porvu. So when it comes to the idea of, you lost 7 in a row here. I mean, again, could be 8 tonight, could end tonight, whatever. Are you committed that, hey, no matter how long this goes on, what it does to the rest of the season, whatever, that there's not a point where, okay, we've lost 9 in a row. Now I got to change a coach. We've lost 11 of 12. Now I've got to change a coach. Is there a point in time where I know you believe he's a good coach? I think he's a good coach.
Yep.
But is there a point in time where you're like, okay, I've given it every chance I can give it. Now I have to change coach.
Yeah, absolutely. That's not out of the question. I don't say will or won't, but I think you have to look at, it's my job to look at everything. The plan is, no matter what, we got to salvage something of this year. It's got to be the process. And I've told the coaches, and it says just teach and preach, because you've got some good young players, you got some older players that got to find their game. So you got to keep teaching, you got to keep preaching the right stuff. You're not gonna bully them. It's not old school where you're gonna bully them to play. So they're gonna play because they want to play, and they gotta come together. So I know there's a lot of people piling on. The team, the organization, the coach, whatever. They have that right. But this group is there's a lot of good young men in there, and they're going to do their best to come out of it, I'm sure. But nothing's off the table. I mean, when you're where we are, be the coach, be the players, be whatever. Everything's on the table. I have ownership to respond to. I have fans to respond to. I have organizational. But one thing that I'm not going to do is I'm not going to get away from the plan of we've got to get younger, we got to get faster, we got to get more. I've been collecting draft choices. I've been collecting, younger players. A good example is, Scott Wedgwood. He was a great backup goalie for us. I mean, he's really good in the room. He gives us quality games. But I had an opportunity. Colorado was looking for goaltending. Here's a young guy who's 5 years younger. And we had high on our radar for guys, those young goalies that are in that 23, 24 age group. And it was having an off year. I pounced on that. I got a pick, and I got younger, and I got cheaper, and I got I think a really good prospect in Noonan. So you got Cronin, and you got Noonan, and you got Saros. You build assets. We moved. I know some people are going, we want to get younger, but a guy like Phil Tomasino, he was a former first-round pick, but he trended down. He had a really great start, and he was trending down. He wasn't in the lineup, and then you get to the position now where you either got to be in the lineup every night, or you end up going on waivers.
Sure.
And once you put guys on waivers, and you look at example, we took Liam Foodie, first-round pick in last year from Columbus. We got him for nothing, and I didn't want to do that. And so I was able at least to recover a pick for the future for hopefully when we're better, have a better season, we can go get someone with that pick, and it might be a difference maker for us. So I'm always trying to collect picks when I can. If I don't want to give anything for free, and then a guy like Dante Faber wasn't playing, that was as much his salary, and we felt that we had guys like that were coming, some of our younger guys. You're seeing now we got 3 guys from Milwaukee, Wellsbury, Blankenberg, and Delgazo playing on our hockey team because we got our second pair in Carrier and Lausanne out. So they're in playing now, and I thought they've done pretty well. But it's hard for those guys to go up, night in, night out against, you get caught out there with Austin Matthews and Mitch Marner. It's a big nut to crack sometimes for those guys. So, but I think they're doing a real good job, and they're making a good case for being a part of the club for the future.
So I do wonder, you brought up, hey, like I got to answer to ownership. I got to answer to fans. I do wonder when it comes to the coach, is this with your relationship with ownership, Sean Henry and everything, is this hey, this is your call? Like, this is Barry Trotz's decision as far as the coach is concerned. This isn't hey, Bill Haslam on line 1, get the coach out of there. We see ownership sometimes take over certain. Are we at a point where, hey, this is still your operation, and when it comes to Andrew Burnett, it's you that has said, hey, I am making the choice to keep him because I think he's part of the solution, not the problem?
Yeah, absolutely. It's my choice until it's not. And you got it right. That's what pro sports is all about. But I can tell you that we have weekly discussions with myself and Sean Henry and Bill Haslam and people in our organization, because we work together. I think that's the great thing with us, is it's not hockey department versus the others, the business side. It's we work together, and Bill is a terrific owner, and the owners that we do have, they're passionate too. They're used to being in the playoffs. They're used to being that, and we've never really done a place. We haven't gone to the place where we are right now. I mean, it's uncomfortable. I'm seeing the Pred head where it is when you pull up the standings. It's weird.
Sure.
And it's an uncomfortable place, and it takes a lot of spine to if we have to go down that path, because we're going to get younger, and as the years, the next few years, we're going to get younger, we're going to get faster, get more skilled, and then we're going to hopefully have that really strong core for a long, long time, and then you'll be there all the time. So this could be just one of those years that nothing's going right. You see it. Colorado had one of those years where they had 110-point year, I think, and then Patrick Waugh got let go, and then they ended up picking fourth. They got Cale Makar, and you see that every year. New Jersey had a year like last year where they took a big step backwards. They were not doing as well as expected. But from my standpoint, I've always said, and it's fantasy hockey until we become a good team, and we have not become a good team. And from that standpoint, where we are, I didn't think we would be where we are, but I can tell you this: our guys are going to give it everything we have. I'm going to give it everything we have. The coaching staff, all that, will do that, and we're going to put an exciting product on the ice, and that's our goal every night. And there's a process to it, and we're going to get there. We're going to get there because we've got a lot of pieces in place, and we're going to stick to the plan.
When it comes to kind of what the immediate future holds, because I agree with you. I mean, I don't like looking at the standings and seeing it at the bottom, but you brought up the draft. And the only way, I look at the best players in the league, and every single one of them was picked first, third, second. There's Aho, Robinson, Robertson. There's a couple of guys that were picked in the second round, but it's almost like every good player was picked fourth overall or first overall.
Yeah.
Is there a point this season where you say, hey, we're in play? And so not to say like, hey, guys, don't go out there and play hard, but instead it's like, hey, coach, let's play Scarbini from Milwaukee instead of somebody good, because this is the opportunity that's presented itself to perhaps be picking that spot in the draft.
Yeah, I don't think that'll ever happen with me at the helm. Anyways, I'm too competitive. When we came in, we wiped out a lot of guys when I first came in, and that group of young guys led by Ryan McDonough and Yossi, we almost made the playoffs. We were 4 or 5. Probably some teams took us lightly, but we hung in there till about game 82. Last year, as we talked about it last year, we got off to the start we did, and I was preparing to sell at the trade deadline because I think we were going to tumble, and we had the U2 thing happen, and I said, because I'm all about culture. If you accept losing, it's not right, but you've got to at least go through the process of trying to win every game and be committed there. And we haven't had enough of that from everybody. There's times, there's periods where I look at that Philly game that we end up losing in overtime. I can honestly say, if I was coaching and I was doing a systematic breakdown of our systems and I was looking for clips, I would go to that game. I was close to as perfect of a game that you can play, and how we lost that game, I have no idea. Mm-hmm. It's one of those, it defies reality sometimes, and that's the way. And that's I want to say it scarred some of our guys, but at the same time, that's how you get better. We're in a society right now, unfortunately, where if you're, I have young kids. I always see the young kids go to these academies and the AAA teams and all that, and they're not getting enough ice time. So I'm going to go somewhere else. I'm in college. I'm not getting ice time. I'm going to go to the portal. Anytime anybody runs into a little bit of resistance or hard times, everybody wants to leave. Everybody wants to not fight through it. And I'm a big believer that the only way you grow is by fighting through it.
Mm-hmm.
And so, we're in one. We're in one, but I guarantee you we're going to be better for it on the other side, because all I know is anything that you fight for and it's worth something, you come out on the other side because you had to fight for it. If it's given, it to me, you really struggle. So this is a little bit of a true character test. It's also a real evaluation of which guys can step up when everything hits the fan. Can we be a guy that can carry the next? We've given a lot of guys opportunities to step up in positions in the lineup, and you say, okay, hey, take it, and they haven't. And so that says a lot to me. So we're not done fixing this, and we will not be done fixing it until it's fixed.
With that being said, did you see Barry Trotz is with us? What Marchessault said the other night in French, loosely translated, that I think he voiced some frustrations with consistently changing his line mates. And what'd you make of that?
And I gave him, I pulled him aside and I said, "Do you understand what happened last night?" And he said, "What are you talking about?" And I said, "What you said about, constantly changing. The reason, he said, I started the game on, I did warm up on one line and I started in another line. Do you have any idea why he did that?" Because he's from Montreal. If you really look, he put the two guys that were from Montreal on the ice to give them a little love. And then Marchie didn't understand it, and it came out the wrong way. And I'm like, here are the coaches trying to give you some love, give you something that that you can hang on to. Hey, I love the coaches on my side. You start me, my hometown. Let's
in
go.
Montreal.
Yeah, and it went the other way. So that's the way it seems to go right now, where lost in translation, we'll put it.
Is there anything you look back at the offseason? Because, look, I mean, I knew in sports nothing is guaranteed. I was excited. I liked the moves. I thought even the guys like Stamkos and Marchessault, their teams may not have wanted to commit to them the way you wanted to, but it's not like they didn't think those guys couldn't play this year.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
So with that, is there anything you look back at the offseason that you're like, you know what? I should have done this instead of that. I made this mistake this offseason that you circle with yourself in the decision.
Yeah, I do. I looked at all the options. I probably should, there was a couple guys at the center ice position that I said, I'm going to go for this guy or that guy, but I didn't really want the term. The only place I really wanted the really long term was on defense, because I didn't want to block some of the young centermen. When they come in, like a guy like Svechkov, I don't want him playing on the fourth line. I want Svechkov to be in the 3-2 hole to start and then move up. And so I didn't want to commit to maybe a long-term centerman that was out there. We were talking to them. We were in the ballpark, but
is their name Elias Lindholm?
I'm not going to say. But put it this way: anybody who is a prominent centerman
or Chandler Stevenson,
those type of names. He can say all the names, but all the prominent names at center, we were involved in a lot of them. And you look at all those guys; they got 7-8 years type deals. I didn't want to really go there. I would commit at the center ice position for a little less than that.
So is that something that you're saying that you wish you could go back and you would have committed to?
Well, I wish I would. I maybe look at it a little different and try to get the years that I wanted, but maybe the value a little different and be a little more creative on that. But other than that, I think I filled the holes I said I wanted to hit. I wanted us to add some offense and insulate some of the guys that are coming. I wanted to improve our power play with the skill people. I think we tried to do that. I was excited about Stamkos and Marchessault at the start of the year because it filled a couple holes and it gave us some length and some insulation for some of our young guys. So, but at this point, I am disappointed in where we are for sure.
Last one for you. As we kind of big picture for the season, as we progress through, it's not very likely right now that this team will make the playoffs. And there will be within, a month and a half, there'll be a trade deadline and there'll be a decision where you've got to start, selling, buying, not doing it, whatever.
Yep.
Is there any way you talked about coming out stronger of this on the other side? And we've talked about the draft picks and getting a high draft choice is there a way you foresee where this team comes together or you see enough that you like that after this year you would still want Andrew Burnett to be the coach? Even if this team doesn't make the playoffs, even if the goals that you went into the year with aren't met, because you do feel like you've come out better on the other side.
Absolutely. I think that's a key element. I mean, if you feel like you can come out on the other side better, then I have no problem with that at all. I think that's how I had an opportunity and the expansion was a little different. And there's times when I think, David should have came down and said, hey, it's time. But there's times when he gave me a longer leash. And I know our teams became better. There's times I know went through a dry spell. I remember a time when I was in Detroit, we weren't going very well. And I knew that if we didn't beat Detroit that night, I was probably gone. You can always sense it. And I remember it was Craig Leopold was the owner at the time. And Craig was on the trip, which was a little bit different because he never really always traveled with us. And then we came back, and it was after the second period, and I think we scored 2. We're down by 1 or 2. I think we're down by 2, and we scored 3 goals in the third period and beat Detroit. And after that, we went on a long run, and we ended up making the playoffs and having a really good run. Obviously, meeting Detroit in the playoffs, and but that sort of solidified our time. We got in the playoffs and we went on a big run. I asked Craig Leopold years later. I said, we were in Detroit, and he remembers, and he goes, "Yeah, I was there to let you go."
Really?
Yeah.
Wow.
And so that's how fickle or how razor edge winning and losing is, or winning going on a run and staying in for a long time and becoming better, or losing your job and moving on. And those are the things that you don't know until years later.
Barry Trotz, as always, presented by Porvu. Barry, thank you for sitting down. And I may agree, disagree, whatever, but I do appreciate you being open and accountable for what, again, I think all of us expected different.
Yeah, we did. Our expectations were probably a little way higher than I did. I think I said I just wanted to get in the playoffs and and if we did, we'd be a little better threat. And our expectations were sky high, and we have not met our own expectations. So I apologize for that, but I do know that we're going to be better, and our goal is still the same, to be that Stanley Cup champion team in the future here. So we're working towards that.
Barry Trotz, Stillman and Company. We continue 102.5 The Game. Stillman and Company, we went a little long with Barry Trotz, but we had a lot to get to. We'll react to it next. What did you think? And how did it make you feel? If you are not happy, you heard what from the mouth of the general manager himself. Did you like it, not like it? I got some thoughts. We'll do it next. Stillman and Company, 102.5 The Game. So Ian asked me, he said, would you want to cut here coming back? And I was like, well, I'd ask you for a Trotz cut, but if we did that, I'd probably just get in the car and go home and then turn it over to Max for the pregame show. So we asked Barry Trotz. We said, why not the coach? He said, I think we'll come out stronger on the other side of this. He still believes in the coach, still thinks he's a good young coach, and is putting it on the players. I said to Trotz, isn't that the coach's job? And he said, look, the coach can't give this team confidence. I asked Trotz, would he consider, if this 7-game losing streak gets worse, would he consider the coach? He said, everything's on the table if it gets to 7 games. So I asked him, I said, are you the one still making the decision? Has management come down? If they said, okay, you should do this, you should do that. He said, no, he's still making the decision. And he said if there was any regret that he had, and he didn't say it, Ian, but I feel like he said it. I think he regrets getting 2 wingers and not 1 center and 1 wing.
I don't know. He was talking about term and player, and not exactly sure what he was getting at there, but you tried to insinuate a couple of centers.
I mean, well, at first I was thinking Lindholm because I like Lindholm, and then I realized, wait a minute, Stevenson was with him in Washington, so that probably was. But again, he was like, oh, we were in the ballpark.
Well, they've been searching for that second-line center still, and they still kind of juggling a little bit here this season.
So I asked the question. You heard it from Barry. What do you think? CC, phone line driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com. CC says, I respect Barry Trotz, but he lost me after he said that the organization wants to get younger. Why did he fire a coach that had a young team less than 3 points away from the postseason and get 3 veterans this year? The majority of the fan base was ready to start over last year, and now it appears that won't happen for another 5 years because of the contracts that have been signed. Look at what team is at the top of the NHL with that fired coach. And somebody else brought up that John Hines has Minnesota up there. Let me say this about John Hines. When they start celebrating first year, the half of the year trophies, John Hines will be the first one I will send one to his house. Because I remember 2021, 2022, the week that Ryan Tannehill threw 3 interceptions against Cincinnati Bengals. The Predators beat Colorado, who would go on to win the Cup that year. The Predators beat Colorado in overtime here. I believe Matt Duchene scored. And I remember saying to Caroline the next day, this team is for real. And it was, January of 2022. And the wheels fell off down the stretch, and it was a joke in the playoffs against Colorado, and we all couldn't wait to get John Hines out of here. I do not miss John Hines. And if John Hines ends up making Minnesota a legitimate Cup contender and winner, then I'll apologize. But until then, I'm not worried about what John Hines is doing. I am not worried. That point, you can tell me all about that. But, and again, as far as starting over is concerned, it's hard for me to hear that, well, we got to blame the players. We need more out of the players. We need more out of the top guys. We need more out of the... You can't move the top guys. You can move the coach. That's where it's tough for me. Joey from Bellevue says, how can you not love Barry Trotz? It's hard rooting against him. He's so genuine and accountable, and he's not running away when things get tough. I'll give him credit. I said that at the beginning. He faces the music. He sat down. I said right there, everybody's wondering why you're not firing the coach. You may not agree with it. Again, I like Andrew Burnett, but I'm not, again, I can only lose so much. And then you, in my opinion, have to fire the coach. One texter said, this interview is killing Stillman. Killing, I think, would be strong. I guess my critique of the conversation with Trotz would be, I don't care about the World Junior players when we're talking about the coach. And I've heard Willie bring that up too, so I'm sure it's probably on the stationery of like, hey, this is kind of, but like, what does having players in the World Juniors mean for Andrew Burnett? Like, to me, that's you talking about you. When it's like, hey, we've got all these draft picks, we've got all these prospects, we've got this future, we've got that's good news for Barry Trotz. I'm not going to say nobody's saying that they should fire Barry Trotz, but Barry Trotz is not under the microscope right now. Andrew Burnett is. So when you're telling me about the players in the World Juniors, I'm like, yeah, but what's that? that one, okay. One texter said, love how you thanked him for being accountable. That's great. I mean, look, I was talking to somebody about this last week. And I said, look, I said, I'm going to say if they lose the game to Ottawa, that they should fire the coach. And I'm like, look, I don't know how that'll make them feel. Nobody probably likes it when it's like, hey, you should fire your coach. Let me tell you how to do your job. But I go, the one thing I know is I know Barry Trotz is not going to walk away. I know he's not going to not do the show at 5 o'clock. And there he was. And I appreciate that. One texter, and I lost it in the thing. Yeah, one texter says, that is totally bogus about Marchessault and the line juggling. Marchessault is not that stupid, and neither are we. I mean, I don't know, man. I think Barry seemed pretty pissed. Like, he was pissed about Stamkos last week, pissed about Marchessault this week. When he was like, the coach was trying to show you a little love on senior night to put you in there in Montreal. That didn't bother me. What bothered me is what another person texted in, which is this excuse about, well, we got into the hotel at 4 o'clock in the morning in Montreal. I don't give a rat's ass about that. Max told me like 6 times, hey, we got into the hotel at 4. I don't care about that. I can't do. One text said, summary, we are screwed the rest of the year. Well, again, look at the standings. Don't you already know that? Like, I didn't say it to Trotz, but I feel like I've given up on the season, and maybe I'll regret it when they pull off 23 in a row. Is that true, by the way, Ian, that Robbie and Joe said that if they
I didn't hear that today.
If they win every game the rest of the year, that they won't make the playoffs?
I did not hear that today. I found that hard to believe, but it's possible. I mean, given where they are, it is just terrible that after like a month into these seasons or quarter into these seasons for both the Titans and the Preds, it's like virtually a wash.
It's just over
already.
I told you, I think it's making me depressed. I think it is actually having an effect on my life that the teams that I talk about the most both stink. Predators game days next. Stillman and Company, 102.5 The Game.
Preds hockey night in Smashville.
Walk over to Yossi. His one-timer, he scores!
Bringing you the keys to victory and the latest storylines surrounding the Nashville Predators. This is Predators Game Day, now on Stillman and Company.
Predators Game Day is presented by TJ Anderson Homes and Benchmark Realty, online at tjandersonhomes.com. Get your house seen, heard, and sold with my guy, TJ Anderson, the proud sponsor of Predators Game Day. The Predators host the Calgary Flames tonight at Bridgestone Arena, 7 o'clock right here, 102.5 The Game. The Flames are 13-10-5, good for 31 points. The Predators last place, 7-15-6, good for 20 points. The Predators have lost their last 7. And it's time for that to stop. According to MoneyPuck.com, the Predators have a 5.8% chance of making the playoffs. Folks, that's terrible. We start with the coach's take, Andrew Burnett, on where this team, what the message is to them.
Well, I think we're talking about where we're at and how do we get better. And here's certain things why we were a little bit better. I thought, we went through a game about 10 games where we're given single digits, chances against. And the last 2 games, I thought we slipped a little bit when we're chasing games. Unfortunately, we've chased too many this year that we've given up a little bit more than we're comfortable with. So we're getting enough to win games, but I thought the last 2 we've given too much up. So that's kind of a little bit of the emphasis going into today. A little bit of game management, a little bit of when guys aren't feeling it and they're struggling, they're trying a little too hard, and it's, costing us. So we really have to tighten that up.
So here would be my message to the team for tonight's game, if there's any hope. Forsberg, Stamkos, Marchessault, the guys that are paid to put the puck in the net. And I'll throw Gus Nyquist in there too. Who's going to be the guy that says, okay, here, I'm going to put the puck in the net tonight. I'm going to take it. I'm going to find a way. And to the $7.74 million goalie that we're stuck with for the next however long, don't give one up. And that should be why you win today. That's it for us. We will see if they do it. Max has the pregame show, which is next. Stillman and Company. We'll see everybody tomorrow at 2.